Chapter 5 and 21, arguing, where is this? Why am I here? Wake up, wake up. Where's my wand? Where's my stuff? What the hell? Who locked us up in this damn place? Help! Who will save me? After a while, the wizards and muggles in each cell began to wake up. Initially, everyone was just confused about the situation in front of them. But soon, doubts, panic, anger, and other emotions gradually began to spread. As more and more people woke up, the warehouse stronghold suddenly turned into a chaotic market filled with noises, cries for help, and curses. They didn't understand what had happened or why the whole world seemed different when they woke up. Swish! Suddenly, a row of strong lights lit up the entire warehouse base. Each cell was equipped with a magic lantern looted from the park. For a moment, the previously dim warehouse was instantly illuminated. The sudden strong light was very uncomfortable for those who had adapted to the dark environment, and all of them covered their eyes with their hands. The noisy environment quieted down suddenly because of the strong light, as if someone had pressed the pause button. After everyone gradually got used to the bright light, they finally saw the shocking scene in front of them clearly. They were not only surrounded by people, but outside the iron railing in front of them, there was a whole cage similar to their room, full of people. Among these figures, some people knew each other. They were colleagues who worked together in the same park. Some were strangers they had never seen before, and some were acquaintances they had known or met several times, but who, to their knowledge, didn't work in the park. At this time, these awakened people all leaned in front of the railing, approaching the cages in front or on both sides, either in shock or in panic, asking questions to the people they knew. Jacob, do you know what's going on? Why are we here? I don't know. I just remember that I went back to the dormitory to rest after the curfew last night, but after waking up, I found myself in this inexplicable place. This was how the wizards who worked in the same park tried to understand each other through the cage. Nancy, why are you here? Aren't you from East Germany? A West German witch asked a familiar East German wizard, puzzled. I don't know. I've been working in a magical animal breeding park before, but I woke up here. What, you also work in the breeding park? What's the name? Could it be that you too? That's right. I also work in a magical zoo area. Although I have to work continuously for half a year, the salary is very high. But the park I'm in is obviously in West Germany. This was a conversation between two wizards who knew each other but did not live in the same park. Through mutual communication, everyone gradually understood that the people imprisoned in these cages were all employees working in the breeding park, though some of them worked in different locations. In other words, everyone here is related to the Fantastic Beasts Park? Yes, I work in a park in East Germany. I'm in West Germany. I'm also in West Germany, but why haven't I seen you at all? Could it be that there are different parks in West Germany? After constant conversations, some people realized that there must be something wrong with the park where they worked. Otherwise, how could they have been brought here without a sound? At this time, a wizard shouted loudly, "We are here for no reason. It must be related to the breeding park. Does anyone know what's going on?" Then a wizard from Park No. 1 recognized Nathan in the cage next door and immediately pointed to him and asked, "Nathan, you are the captain of the maintenance team. What do you know?" "Me?" Nathan had just woken up not long ago. The stun spell in him was quite powerful. Hearing the question at this time, he looked at the other party blankly. "I don't know what happened, but I'm different from you. I was attacked by 2 men wearing white masks. They rushed into the dormitory suddenly. I was on the first floor at the time and was directly stunned by them." "I remembered something when you said that," another wizard added. "I was also knocked out from behind when I went out to urinate at night. But it seems the rest of you woke up here directly after falling asleep." Several people in the cell began to share their experiences, confirming they had also been attacked. Some even mentioned seeing the attackers, who indeed wore white masks. White masks? Could it be the men with the silver spears? "But that doesn't make sense," a wizard said, looking puzzled. "Mark, do you know those people? Are the silver spears you're talking about smugglers who sell magical animals on the black market?" someone asked, stepping forward and grabbing Mark's clothes. I heard it too. What do you mean by shouldn't? Do you know who these people are? Another person demanded, approaching Mark. Your patrol team is close with the leader. Are you hiding something from us? The shouts of the two people spread to other cells, drawing the attention of all the civilian wizards and muggles. They all turned their eyes to Mark or looked at the other patrol members they knew. Feeling the pressure of everyone's stares and seeing a few people who seemed ready to act, Mark blurted out, "It can't be the silver spear that tied us here. Our park was built by them. The silver spear is actually our employer. Why would an employer kidnap their employees?" The commoner wizards in each cell were in an uproar upon hearing Mark's words. What? We've been working for the silver spear? Doesn't that mean we're all accomplices of the smuggling syndicate? Someone exclaimed. In Germany, most people knew the Silver Spear Club as a criminal gang operating in a gray area. They were usually good citizens and didn't want to be associated with such people. Nathan, who was on the side, felt stunned by this revelation. He had heard Jimmy mention that the patrol team was related to the Silver Spear before, but he had always been honest and didn't want to believe it. Now, with a patrol team member admitting it, the truth was undeniable. Looking around distractedly, Nathan's eyes lit up when he saw a figure sitting in the corner of a cell. He immediately shouted, "Your Excellency Claremont, you are our campus leader. You should know what's going on." Hearing his shout, the eyes of the people around him followed Nathan's gaze and found Claremont sitting dejectedly in a corner. He looked drained, with only dull eyes remaining. "It's really Mr. Claremont. You were also kidnapped to this place?" The employees who used to respect and love this kind leader shouted at him with concern. "Your Excellency Claremont, it can't be the Silver Spear, right? Aren't we all from them?" The patrol members in Park know. One also shouted at him in panic, hoping for an answer. But Claremont looked like a living dead, sitting in the corner with his head down, muttering to himself, ignoring the shouts around him. A wizard in the same cell as Claremont thought he might not be fully aware, so he gently pushed him and asked, "Mr. Claremont, do you know what's happening?" The wizard called out softly a few times, but Claremont still didn't respond. Seeing this, the wizard lowered his head and moved closer. When he finally heard what Claremont was muttering to himself, his expression changed dramatically. "What's the matter? What happened to His Excellency Claremont? Was he injured by the attacker?" Many people were still concerned about the old man. "No." The wizard who had approached Claremont shook his head, his expression grim. "He keeps saying, 'It's over, it's over. I've been abandoned by the club.'" "What?" The crowd in each cell widened their eyes in shock upon hearing this. The commoner wizards were stunned. Claremont's words confirmed that they were indeed working for the Silver Spear and a smuggling group. The patrol members were equally shocked. If Claremont had been abandoned, did that mean they had been abandoned too? Was it really the Silver Spear that had locked them up? It didn't make sense. They had been working diligently and had never provoked the club. The hundreds of people around were silent for only a moment before breaking out into more intense noise. Some were trying to confirm the accuracy of the news with members of the patrol team, while others were arguing amongst themselves. Many were venting their emotions in panic. "Everyone, stop arguing!" A wizard yelled loudly, his voice cutting through the surrounding noise. Everyone turned their attention to him in unison. "Let's not get entangled in this. No matter who got us here or who we were working for, we are all prisoners now. What we should be thinking about is how to escape." This sorcerer, though large and imposing, had a keen mind. His words brought a sudden clarity to those around him. End of this chapter. Chapter 522, Infighting. "That's right. We are all wizards. This is just an ordinary cell. How can it hold us? But our wands have been taken away. Can't you cast spells without a wand? Can you? I can't. I can't either, but with so many of us here, surely someone knows how to cast spells without a wand." The group of wizards began discussing fervently. After all, they were wizards, and some among them could cast spells without a wand. Sure enough, the strong wizard who had proposed the idea exclaimed excitedly, "Let me try. My level of transfiguration is decent, and I can manage without a wand. Watch me turn these iron bars into paper." He stretched out his hand and pointed at an iron railing. Under his control, an iron rod transformed into a bunch of paper tubes instantly. Everyone was overjoyed at the sight. Boom! Ah! Before the wizard could celebrate, a fast and urgent magic bullet struck his chest, sending him flying and knocking down several others in his path. The group turned to see where the spell had come from and spotted a wizard dressed in silver armor standing in the corridor outside the cell, pointing a white wand at the fallen wizard. "Who are you? Are you the one who brought us here? Why did you do that? Are you crazy? Do you know what crime it is to imprison so many of us? The Ministry of Magic will not let you go." The group shouted at the figure in the corridor. "Shut up, all of you!" The silver-armored wizard bellowed, his voice amplified by a sonorous charm. "Calm down. I'm tired of listening to your nonsense." He snorted coldly and continued in a menacing tone. "Also, don't even think about escaping. Otherwise, you'll suffer." With a flick of his wand, the silver-armored wizard restored the deformed railing to its original steel form. His ferocious demeanor caused many to shrink back in fear. The wizard who had been knocked down struggled to his feet, glaring angrily. "Who are you? Why are you keeping us here?" Well, I didn't expect such a tough guy among you," the silver-armored wizard said with interest. "Haven't you already guessed our identity? Why ask such pointless questions? As for our purpose—" He paused, then continued with a soft smile. "Seeing your courage, I'll explain briefly, but only this once." Everyone fell silent, eager to understand why they had been kidnapped and brought to this place. "I know," the silver-armored wizard began in a deep voice. "Most of you did your best when you worked for the club. Logically, we shouldn't treat you like this. But unfortunately, there are some problems in several breeding parks opened by the club. It's very dangerous to stay there now, so we brought you here for refuge." "Refuge? You call this refuge?" The group was incensed. They felt like prisoners, not refugees. Many suspected that the parks had been raided by the Ministry of Magic. "Ahem, then what are you going to do with us? Are you going to keep us locked up here forever?" "Forever?" The wizard who had stood up restrained his anger, coughed twice, and asked reluctantly, "You don't need to worry about that. We will release you to continue working once the current troubles are dealt with." Silver Spear Lance sneered sinisterly. "Will you really let us go?" After hearing this, the captives finally felt a glimmer of hope. They had feared that these criminals might go mad and kill them all. However, some still frowned at Silver Spear's words. What did he mean by continue to work? Did he expect these imprisoned wizards to keep working for the club? What do you mean by continuing to work? The injured wizard, not an idiot, immediately sensed the trickery in Silver Spear's words and asked, "What's the point of this?" Silver Spear Lance sneered. "If we want to continue building the breeding park in the future, we will need you. It may be difficult for us to recruit local people for a while. Besides, from now on, you are the property of the club. The goods we trade are not limited to magical animals. If you ask me, we should have done this long ago. This way, we can save a lot of money." Everyone was stunned by Silver Spear's shocking words, delivered in such a flat tone. "Property? Do you want us to be slaves? Why do you treat us like this? I'm just a muggle, not a wizard. I only appeared in the park because my wife is a witch. You are simply demons. Even if I die, I will never work for you again." "Death?" Silver Spear Lance snorted coldly. "It's hard for you to die here. You'd better be honest with me. If you behave well in the future, you may have a chance to shed the status of property. As for whether you work hard for us, you have no choice. We have many ways to make you submit, such as modifying your memory. What do you think?" The more than 500 people present felt as if they were covered with insects and ants after hearing these cold and heartless words. They couldn't believe such an inhuman organization existed in this world. "No!" After a moment of silence, a wizard in a nearby cage excitedly climbed up to the iron bars, squeezing his face into the gap. "My Lord Silverspear, I don't care about the others, but I have contributed a lot to the club before. When I was in the East German Progressive Trade Union, I provoked conflicts between East and West Germany. I even shot and wounded many West Germans. Have you forgotten all this? You can't treat us like this." His words caused an uproar. What did he mean? Had these people provoked the conflict between East and West Germany? Were those civic groups actually lackeys of the Silver Spear? What do you mean? Is it reasonable to make us slaves? The injured wizard stood up excitedly and shouted angrily, "You are a bunch of reusable tools." The wizard who begged for mercy retorted indifferently, "It's only natural for the club to treat you as property, but we are different. We belong to the club." He then looked flatteringly at Silver Spear. "My lord, I have long wanted to join the club and become a great Silver Spear. Please let me go. I will do anything for you, as long as you don't keep me locked up with these scumbags." In an attempt to show his loyalty, the wizard didn't care about anything else and directly insulted the civilian wizards around him. His behavior inspired many former collaborators of the club who were mostly members of the Breeding Park's patrol team. They all scrambled to show their loyalty as well. The loyalty from the Silver Spear in front of them was evident. The rest of the commoner wizards around saw how selfish these people were, ignoring them completely. This infuriated them, and they began to yell angrily. The entire warehouse park was soon divided into two camps. On one side were the patrols of the major parks, and on the other side were the commoner wizards and muggles. The arguments grew fierce, and soon people from both camps started pushing and shoving each other on the brink of a full-blown fight. "Shut up, everyone!" A loud voice, imbued with the magical power of a curse, roared from the muzzle of the Silver Spear. The sound shocked the hundreds of people present, making them dizzy and causing everyone to fall silent in fear. "Your task here is to be honest with me. I have a bad temper. If I catch you making loud noises or fighting, I won't be polite," the Silver Spear warned. He then turned his cold gaze to the wizard, begging for mercy. "Although you were partners in the club before, there is now a traitor among you. Until you find them, stay quiet. If your behavior is good enough, we might consider letting you play for the club again." Hearing the Silver Spear's speech, the former partners of the club and members of the park patrol immediately calmed down. They understood that they still had a chance to reclaim their property status in the future. However, someone has to be responsible for this riot, the Silver Spear continued. He raised his wand and pointed it at the begging wizard. "Who gave you permission to speak without my consent? Cut your heart!" End of this chapter. Chapter 523. Prison Escape. What? The sorcerer who had been begging for mercy from the Silver Spear fell to the ground, clutching his chest in pain and screaming continuously. His agonized expression struck fear into everyone around him. While some thought he deserved it and even felt a bit of schadenfreude, most were chilled to the bone. It was only now that they fully realized the cruelty of the group they were up against. If the Silver Spear could be so ruthless to their former collaborators, it was clear they would be even more merciless with their prisoners. As they contemplated their bleak future, everyone's expressions turned bitter. The Silver Spear tortured the sorcerer with the Cruciatus Curse for about 10 seconds before withdrawing his hand. He then yelled, "It's time! Dinner!" At his command, several wizards suddenly appeared in the corridor between the cells. They were all dressed similarly to the Silver Spear. It was obvious that they had been lurking around the cells under the guise of an illusion spell. Previously, everyone had thought there were no guards. So we've been watched all along? The thought made their earlier escape plan seem like a joke in the eyes of the Silver Spear. The newly appeared Silver Spear wizards began to slowly wander in front of each cell. Every time they passed a cell, they raised their wands and tapped lightly. As they cast spells, a long table and a large tub appeared out of thin air in each cell. After a while, the Silver Spears completed the task of serving the food and then waved their wands lightly, disappearing once more. From beginning to end, the Silver Spear wizards did not say a word. They moved like invisible ghosts, and the prisoners could not detect their movements. This indifferent behavior created an invisible pressure on everyone, making them too afraid to even complain, as they didn't know if there were more guards hidden around them. "Everyone shut up and eat," the Silver Spear leader commanded coldly. "You will get food once a day at noon and night. When you are thirsty, drink water from the wooden barrels in your rooms. The water will be replenished daily. The rest of the time, stay quiet. As long as you follow the rules, I will be kind. But if anyone makes loud noises or disobeys, don't blame me for being harsh." With that, the leader sneered and waved his wand, hiding his figure once more. Although the silver spears were no longer visible, everyone still didn't dare to make mistakes. They even lowered their voices when speaking, knowing that the guards were secretly hiding in the dark. Under these circumstances, they had no choice but to comply. "What kind of food is this? It's just a bucket of boiled potatoes," Jimmy, who was in the same cell as Nathan, complained angrily as he grabbed a piece of boiled potato with a bit of dirt on the skin. "Come on, eat what you have. At least they aren't asking for our names," a more optimistic wizard whispered to Jimmy. "And you'd better not speak ill of them out loud. You saw that the guards didn't leave, they just disappeared." "But—" Jimmy wanted to complain more, but knew the other wizard was right. Their lives and deaths were in the hands of their captors. Offending them would only bring trouble. Reluctantly, Jimmy held back his complaints, but he couldn't help but glance at another wizard nearby. He suddenly lost his temper. This wizard was one of the 2 patrol members who had caused trouble for him last night. Now, Jimmy found himself unlucky enough to be locked up with this guy. He was also one of those who had shot at the silver spear just moments ago. Clearly, this guy was in cahoots with those villains, all lackeys of the silver spear, Jimmy thought to himself, glaring at the wizard with incomprehension. "What are you looking at?" The wizard noticed Jimmy and stepped forward, cursing in a low voice. "I'm telling you, you'd better behave yourself here. You heard the silver spear say, 'I'm not the same as you guys. I still have a future outside. If you offend me, see if I don't make you pay, later.'" After his harsh words, the wizard grabbed a few pieces of potatoes from the wooden basin and returned to sit on the bunk next to him. Jimmy, a hot-tempered young man, felt his anger rising at the wizard's blatant threat. But before he could act, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Turning, he saw it was his old captain, Nathan. Nathan held Jimmy and shook his head silently, clearly not wanting the young man to do anything rash. "Captain, look at that guy's despicable behavior. He's also a prisoner here, yet he dares to act so arrogantly. And it's partly their fault we're in this mess," Jimmy complained quietly, still addressing Nathan as captain out of habit. "I know that guy is infuriating, but if you go looking for trouble and provoke the guards, you'll just be playing into his hands," Nathan sighed. "Don't you see? He's trying to bait you." "What do you mean?" Jimmy asked, confused. "The silver spear only fired twice after it appeared, once at the person trying to escape and once at the guy who started the trouble with the patrol team. They didn't care whether the person was connected to the club or not. They only punished those who provoked trouble. So, that guy is just talking big. He won't dare to do anything serious. If he does, he'll be the one to suffer," Nathan explained, glancing at the wizard sitting back in the corner. "I think he's trying to provoke you deliberately. If you go up to him or start a fight, you'll definitely be punished by the silver spear." "I see," Jimmy said, realizing the wizard's malicious intent. He glared at the wizard again, but refrained from doing anything rash. Seeing that Jimmy had calmed down, Nathan felt relieved. Then, as if he had thought of something, he turned to the fence on the side of the cell. "My friend, how is your injury? Is it serious?" The wizard, who had been injured by the silver spear, was next to Nathan. Hearing Nathan's concern, he moved to the edge of the cell and rubbed his chest indifferently. "It's just a small injury. Thank you for asking. By the way, my name is Bob. I used to work in East German Park. How about you, friend?" "You can call me Nathan. I used to work in West German Park," Nathan replied, feeling a good impression of Bob, who had stood up for everyone earlier. "Thank you for speaking up for us before. If you need help, just ask." "Heh, we're all caged birds now. How bad could it be?" Bob sighed self-deprecatingly, then leaned closer to the railing and asked in a low voice, "I saw you stand up for your friend. You don't get along with those patrols, do you?" Nathan leaned in as well. "I don't know how it was in your park, but in ours, no one liked those guys. And now they've gone from being prisoners to our jailers." "It seems that we are very similar, except for where we work," Bob sneered, glancing cautiously left and right to see if anyone was watching them. After ensuring that the patrol members he knew weren't paying attention, Bob whispered, "Nathan, we can't continue like this. Those guys with silver spears don't treat us as human beings at all. Oh? Nathan looked around cautiously after hearing Bob's words, then covered his mouth, pretending to be casual. What do you mean? We have to escape. Although Bob's voice was low, his tone was resolute. Are you willing to take the risk with me? What? Nathan was taken aback, and then said urgently, Bob, don't do anything rash. You've seen the methods of those with silver spears. They might be hiding around us right now. Do you even know where we are, how to avoid the guards, and how not to get caught? Have you considered all of this? The risk of running away recklessly is too great. I know, Bob replied, his voice barely above a whisper, but his words were compelling. I understand the risks are high, and if I fail, I might die. But I'm even more unwilling to continue being manipulated. Aren't you tired of being their slave? Nathan fell silent. Although he was usually honest, he wasn't a fool. The way the silver spears treated them was no different from how they treated the magical animals they faced every day. Continuing to be at their mercy might indeed lead to a life worse than death. Then what do you want to do? Do you have a specific plan? Nathan was clearly moved but remained cautious, wanting to hear Bob's ideas. I don't have a perfect solution yet, Bob admitted, shaking his head regretfully. But we can't just sit and wait. I noticed earlier that this place seems to be a completely sealed space. The top and the surrounding area are entirely closed off. I can't even see a door. I suspect there might be a magical passage, like a fireplace. If we can figure out how to hide from the guards, we might have a good chance of escaping. End of this chapter. Chapter 524, Gathering. You mean there's a flu network here that connects to the outside world? Nathan's eyes lit up, but then he hesitated. But you also know that although the defense here doesn't look very tight, it's actually surrounded by invisible silver spears. Even if we find the fireplace, how are we going to get there safely? Their understanding of alchemy and the flu network was quite superficial. They believed that as long as there was a fireplace connected to the flu network, they could move anywhere. They didn't know that such alchemy equipment could be modified. Indeed, there was a fireplace in the warehouse stronghold, but it could only transport them to one place, a safe house. This safe house served as a transfer station connecting to the outside world and as a stronghold for Moody and others to rest and reorganize. They patrolled the warehouse in shifts, so if Nathan and Bob used the fireplace, they would end up right in the middle of their enemies. But Bob was unaware of this and saw it as a potential escape route. With excitement in his eyes, he continued to encourage Nathan. I know the defense here seems tight, so I don't expect to escape successfully in the short term. But this is an opportunity, isn't it? All we have to do is observe. Observation, you mean? Nathan began to understand Bob's plan. That's right. No matter how vigilant those silver spears are, they're still human. There will definitely be times when they let their guard down. If we seize those moments, we might have a chance to escape. I understand what you mean, Nathan nodded, still incredulous. So, we should lie low, pretend to obey, and then take advantage of any lapses in their defenses? Exactly. Bob's excitement grew, but he kept his voice low. Besides waiting for the right moment, we need to prepare in advance. Prepare? You mean trying to get a wand? No, getting a wand is too difficult and risky, Bob shook his head calmly. I mean, we should use this time to hone our skills in casting spells without a wand. Do you know the essentials of wandless spellcasting? Essentials? I learned the theory in magic school, but I've never tried it myself. Wandless spellcasting is really difficult. Knowing the principles doesn't mean you can do it, Nathan replied, frowning. Even if you don't have experience, you have to try. Otherwise, we won't be able to break through the chains in front of us. My wandless spellcasting isn't very good either, so I've decided to practice in secret. If you want to regain your freedom, don't give up this opportunity. Bob's eyes were full of determination, and this determination influenced Nathan. Okay, there's no hope anyway, so I'll give it a try. Nathan gritted his teeth. It was risky to try unfamiliar spellcasting skills, and it could cause accidents, but they were already at a dead end. Nathan didn't want to end up like those captive magical animals. That's the spirit, Bob nodded excitedly. But be careful. The patrolmen and silver spears are in cahoots. Besides watching out for the silver spears, you have to be wary of the patrolmen too. I understand. You be careful too. By the way, should we involve others? There's strength in numbers. Nathan, ever the good-hearted man, thought of their companions, especially the brash Jimmy. I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Bob hesitated, feeling embarrassed. After some contemplation, Bob still shook his head and refused. Every time we let more people know, the risk of our escape increases. What about the others who are still in custody? You can't just leave them like this, Nathan argued. Although Nathan and the others hadn't escaped yet, they were already thinking about what would happen after they did. You're being foolish, Bob retorted. These silver spears capture people in the breeding park. They must be wanted by the Ministry of Magic. If we get out, we should contact the Aurors and let them rescue the others. Bob looked at Nathan, exasperated by his lack of foresight. You're right, Nathan admitted, Ted, realizing how short-sighted he had been. He hadn't considered such a simple truth. After exchanging a few more words, they dispersed, careful not to stay together too long and arouse the guards' suspicion. What they didn't know was that shortly after their conversation, the silver spear who had appeared at the beginning came to their cell and overheard everything. This ferocious silver spear was, in fact, Moody. Anduin had instructed the Aurors to speak as little as possible to avoid revealing their secrets. Moody took this to heart, often remaining invisible and silent. Communication with the prisoners was left to him, testing his acting skills. Playing the role of the silver spear seemed to activate a special switch inside Moody. He found himself quickly adapting to the role, becoming more and more engrossed in it. His mockery and torture of the prisoners were so convincing that they instilled genuine fear, establishing the silver spear's evil and cruel reputation. Moody was quite satisfied with his performance, even considering playing the role of an evil organization member after retirement. Moody had been keeping an eye on Bob from the beginning. He admired Bob's bravery and fearlessness, so he remained vigilant after becoming invisible. Who would have thought that Bob would be so daring, discussing escape plans so soon after being taught a lesson? However, Moody didn't expose their conspiracy immediately. He wasn't a real silver spear, and their plans might still be manipulated. Before making any decisions, Moody needed to meet and communicate with Anduin again. The time for their next meeting soon arrived. On the fourth day after Moody captured the prisoners, and one day after Anduin and the others cleaned up the breeding park, Anduin, Moody, and Andre gathered at the safe house. They had agreed to meet every few days to exchange information. "You're here, Anduin. Come and sit." Andre, who had arrived first, warmly greeted Anduin as he appeared from the fireplace, inviting him to the small reception room in the safe house. Andre's attitude towards Anduin was not just respectful, but also increasingly trusting. After all, during the previous concentric circles operation, Anduin had demonstrated what it meant to be a true professional. His exhaustive and meticulous planning had left Andre in awe. In the few days they had worked together, most of Andre's tasks involved meetings, travel, and moving things. The total time he spent fighting with his wand was less than an hour. To him, Anduin had become a symbol of reliability, someone whose plans he would support without hesitation. "Thank you, Director Andre," Anduin replied, taking a seat. After a good day's rest, he had recovered his mental state and was ready to discuss their next steps. Anduin glanced left and right before asking, "Where is Moody? Hasn't he arrived yet?" "He's still watching in the prison. It's very convenient for Moody to come here. The fireplace there is directly connected to this place. He said to let him know when you arrive, and he'll be here immediately," Andre replied. He then pulled out a communicator and sent a message to Moody. Sure enough, the two didn't wait long. Moody, still wearing his silver spear costume, limped in. To hide his lameness, he had never acted in front of the captives, usually showing up, speaking directly, and then disappearing immediately. "Hey, isn't this Lord Flobberworm? You don't wear a mask all of a sudden. It really makes me a little uncomfortable," Moody joked as soon as he entered the room. This had become their favorite joke lately. Andre rolled his eyes in response. "I think pretending to be a silver spear has broken your brain, Your Excellency Teppo Warthog." "Ha ha," Moody laughed indifferently. "Don't mention it. Pretending to be a silver spear is really interesting. I've become a little addicted recently. Stop talking nonsense and calm down, you idiots. Feed me honestly and don't quarrel, Moody said, demonstrating his bewildered look to the two of them. Seeing Moody's antics, Duin looked at him speechlessly. I think we'd better get rid of this guy before he goes to the club and surrenders. Just let him play for a few more days. I think Moody will be sensible, Anduin said, shaking his head indifferently. He then looked at Moody seriously. How is the situation in the stronghold? Are those wizards behaving? Seeing that Anduin had brought up business, Moody put away his playful thoughts and took off the mask on his face. Those guys are in a stable condition, but because of the incident that happened at the beginning, they have now split into two factions. One group is dominated by former collaborators of the club. They are mostly members of the park's patrol team. Compared to others, these people are more secure and even try to show loyalty to us, hoping we'll let them go. The other faction consists of the remaining civilian wizards and muggles. They complain a lot and sometimes conflict with the other faction, but we stopped it in time, so there haven't been any unexpected situations. End of this chapter. Chapter 525. Sweeping from the bottom. Those Silver Spear collaborators still can't get rid of their bad habits. I bet they're still wondering why they were arrested together, Andre sneered. Make sure to record all their names. I'll deal with them later. Don't worry about that, Moody chuckled. I've noted down all their names in my little book. I'll hand it over to you once I'm done. What about Claremont? Is he doing well in prison? You need to keep an eye on him. He's an important witness, and we can't afford any mistakes, Anduin asked, concerned about Claremont's condition. Don't worry, I know how crucial Claremont is. I've arranged for someone to watch him closely. But the old man isn't in a good state of mind. He mutters to himself in the corner all day, and the other prisoners are disgusted with him. They occasionally say bad things to him, but under our control, no physical conflict has broken out. Moody recalled. Not in a good state of mind? Anduin rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Has he shown any signs of a hunger strike? No, Moody shook his head firmly. He eats and rests as usual, but he never communicates with others. It's like he's an old man with autism. I see, Anduin grinned teasingly. This old fox is putting on an act. Since he doesn't want to die and his eating and resting habits are normal, it proves he still wants to live. He's just trying to show you that he's harmless now, probably hoping we'll let him go. Huh? So this old guy is acting just like us? Moody was amused. Then I should teach him a lesson so he knows who's in charge. No need, Anduin shook his head. Let him act if he wants to. It's all for show. At least it proves Claremont still has the will to survive. All right, I'll watch him act to pass the time, Moody shrugged indifferently. Then he remembered something. By the way, I found something interesting at the stronghold these past 2 days. 2 wizards are plotting to use the underground fireplace to escape. Every night, they hide under the covers and practice casting spells without a wand. If you know all this, why don't you just expose them? Andre complained nonchalantly, not understanding the significance of Moody's revelation. You don't get it. Moody gave Andre a blank look, then turned to Anduin. What do you think? What are the names of these 2 wizards, and what were their roles in the park before? Do they have any concrete plans? Anduin seemed very interested in this information and immediately asked Moody. One of them is named Bob, who used to work on the maintenance team in East German Park. The other is Nathan, also on the maintenance team in Park Number 3. Bob has a strong sense of justice, and Nathan is very responsible. Both of them are quite capable, and after just a few days of practice, their wandless spellcasting has improved slightly, Moody explained, having prepared this information in advance. Well, if you wanted to let the 2 of them go quietly, do you think it would be difficult? Anduin seemed to have an idea and asked Moody. What? Let them go? Before Moody could respond, Andre looked at Anduin in astonishment. If we let these guys go, wouldn't it risk exposing our operation? If the news leaks, let it leak. Anduin chuckled in response. I was still contemplating how to involve the Department of Legal Enforcement in a logical manner. I hadn't figured it out yet, but now an opportunity has presented itself, Anduin said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Andre, not being a fool, quickly grasped Anduin's implication. Are you suggesting that we, two wizards, illegally imprisoned by the Silver Lance, managed to escape with their lives and are subsequently rescued by Aurors from the Department of Legal Enforcement? Then, Chief Andre leads a raid on the secret stronghold, saving hundreds of innocent wizards. Doesn't that story make perfect sense? Anduin hinted with a chuckle. Ah, I see now, Andre replied, his thoughts aligning with Anduin's. You mean to let these two escape on purpose, then, have my Aurors rescue them, giving us a legitimate reason to act. This way, we can bring over 500 wizards into the light. Exactly, Anduin nodded. It's a perfect excuse, but there are still many details to consider. For instance, how to make their escape seem plausible and ensure they fall into your hands once they do. I think there's room for maneuver, Moody interjected, having clearly thought about this from the start. I've been keeping a close eye on these two. They mentioned that once they regain their freedom, they would seek help from the Ministry of Magic. So, as long as we prepare in advance, we can easily intercept them. Moreover, their will to survive is strong. It seems to have even enhanced their ability to cast spells without wands. If this continues, they might be able to escape the cage within 10 days to half a month. Their escape plan, however, is quite naive. They intend to flee through the fireplace, not considering the possibility of the Flu network being altered. That's not an issue, Anduin said, producing a small box from his pocket. Inside were two tiny, mung bean-sized devices. I can modify the place to redirect them elsewhere. You just need to turn a blind eye to their escape attempts. Apply some pressure, but ensure they succeed. These are trackers. Before they escape, find a way to make them ingest these. Even if they get away, we can track them. No problem, Moody said with a sneer, taking the box. He then turned to Andre. The next move requires your cooperation. Pay attention to the messages I send you. Understood, Andre replied with a leisurely smile. The next stage is up to us. We need to perform this act convincingly. Anduin then addressed Andre again. By the way, when we counterattack the prison, how will Moody and the others, disguised as Silver Spears, escape? That's quite simple. I'll modify the anti-apparition circle in the underground warehouse. I'll give Moody a device. After a symbolic fight, Moody can deactivate the circle and apparate away. That should work, Moody agreed. Well then, the great task of saving innocent people is entrusted to you two, Anduin said, turning to Andre. I've reviewed the memory extracted from Claremont. It's quite valuable, instigating civil unrest, conspiring against the Schmidt family, and information about Virgil, the deputy of the Department of Law Enforcement. What are your thoughts on him? I've been monitoring Virgil. It seems inappropriate to dismiss him rashly. I'm concerned about this matter, Andre said, his expression growing somber as he mentioned his longtime subordinate. It's not the right time to confront him directly. I think you should, Anduin suggested after a moment of thought. We should isolate him from the main business first. You'll need to use other people for the next action. If he continues to stay in the Aura Command to perform official duties, it will inevitably hinder you. I think that's all we can do for now. I'll find a way to arrange a task for him soon and transfer him away from Berlin. Andre sighed helplessly. Anduin nodded and then said seriously, now that we have so much evidence against the Silver Spear, it's time to take action against Pete. We won't be able to get rid of him as Minister of Magic until we expose the Silver Spear openly. It should have been done a long time ago. You don't know how hard it was for me to suppress my anger when I was with those guys these past few days. I wanted to tear their mouths apart on the spot. Andre vented his frustration. Then he asked Anduin, since you said that, you must already have a plan. Go ahead and arrange it. I'll follow your lead. That's good, Anduin said, leaning forward slightly and speaking in a low voice. Since we are going to take down Pete, we must be fully prepared. The prison escape plan is just part of Operation Blind Snake. Before that, we need to weaken Pete's power in the Ministry of Magic, Anduin continued, looking at Andre. I'll give you the memories of Claremont and the Eastletter Mitt family. See if you can contact the Schmidt family and win them over from Pete. I think that's possible, Andre nodded. I have a good relationship with their patriarch. His beloved second son was killed back then. If he knew the truth, he probably wouldn't continue to help Pete. Exactly. Now that they have conflicts of interest, you can promise the Schmidt family that you have information on the Phoenix. If the Schmidt family is willing to defect, we can even help them get their revenge, Anduin said with a sneer on his face. End of this chapter. Chapter 526. Press release. What? You have information about Phoenix? Andre was taken aback. How could Anduin know everything? Initially, Andre was shocked by Anduin's knowledge of the Golden Snidget and the breeding park, but he didn't expect that this was just the tip of the iceberg. It seemed Anduin had many cards up his sleeve that Andre was unaware of. It was just obtained by accident while collecting information on the club. Non-government groups affiliated with East Germany come into contact with the Silver Spear every once in a while, and the direct manager is Phoenix, Anduin explained, though he wouldn't reveal that he had been tracking Phoenix's movements for a long time. That's great. With these bargaining chips, I am confident that I can reverse the position of the Schmidt family, Andre replied confidently. That's good, but this is just the first step, Anduin nodded in satisfaction. He then took out a small box and handed it to Andre. There are 3 directors who have completely fallen for Pete. Inside this box are 3 trackers. Try to find an opportunity to hide them on those 3 individuals. Of course, you don't have to force it. This is just to ensure they can't escape. Andre nodded in understanding and took the small box. Anduin then took out another stack of parchment and handed it to Andre. In addition to weakening their power in the Ministry of Magic, we also have to control the power of public opinion. I know a reporter from the Daily Prophet who has agreed to help write several press releases, Anduin continued. After you rescue those civilian wizards from prison, you will publish these reports in batches. Some of them are for you, and some are for exposing Pete's manipulation of civil organizations to maliciously split Germany. Of course, there is also the exposure of Pete's relationship with the Silver Spear, but the last one depends on whether the situation warrants it. Theoretically, the crime of attempting to maliciously split the country alone can get Pete out of power. As for the relationship with the club, it is better not to let the public know unless absolutely necessary, as it relates to the international image of the German magical community. I have made notes on these press releases. You can contact the media friends you know locally. Every time you complete one of the above items, it will be published in the newspaper the next day. The power of public opinion is a very critical part of our strategy to take down Pete and his gang. Andre was a little surprised to receive the stack of parchment from Anduin. He hadn't known that the other party had prepared such detailed plans. As he glanced through the documents, his eyes widened. The content written on the parchment was, to say the least, quite exaggerated. For example, the top one had the title, "The Savior of the German Magic World Emerges. Director Andre fights bravely to save thousands of innocent wizards." There was even a note at the back, stating that it should be delivered to the newspaper office on the night of the rescue, ensuring the whole world would know about it the next day. In addition to this, there was another titled, "Shock! The hypocritical Minister of Magic, suspected of deliberately manipulating public opinion to destroy the German magic world." Another report read, "Claremont, the businessman of the magic supply shop, confesses, Minister Pete is actually..." The note indicated it should be delivered on the 2nd night after the prisoner rescue, meaning it would be published on the 3rd day. There were dozens of reports in the stack, either promoting Andre or exposing Pete's conspiracy, and all of them had notes on the release time, ensuring a steady stream of information would be published almost every day. 2 articles, combined, can continue to broadcast for about half a month. Anduin looked at the material in his hand, unable to close his mouth in surprise. These events, which haven't even occurred yet, were already written as news in Anduin's hands. Moreover, the content woo, as highly exaggerated, often inflating Andre's achievements by 10%, 50%, and amplifying the charges against Pete and the Silver Spear. According to these articles, Pete was portrayed as the Dark Lord of Germany, intent on destroying the wizarding world. Why? Isn't the content true? Anduin asked with a chuckle. If things develop as expected, what's written here is indeed the truth. Andre initially wanted to refute, but after scrutinizing the material, he couldn't find much fault. However, isn't the content a bit too exaggerated? Look at the first article, claiming to save thousands of innocent wizards. There aren't even that many people in the prison now, and not all of them are wizards. Andre struggled for a long time before voicing his concern. You don't need to worry about that, Anduin replied calmly. It's the media, after all. It's normal to use slightly exaggerated words to catch attention. Those reporters aren't from the Ministry of Magic. How can they know such accurate information? If the information were too precise, it wouldn't look like it came from the media. You call that a little exaggeration? Andre thought, speechless. This was originally sent by us, but upon closer inspection, he noticed that the sources of information were all cited as according to well-informed sources, which might not directly point to him. Still, when the newspapers either scold Pete or promote his news, anyone with a bit of sense could realize it had something to do with him. Perhaps seeing Andre's concerns, Anduin smiled and said, You have to understand a truth. The German Ministry of Magic having a disaster like Pete will have a bad impact on the German wizarding world, even causing the ministry's prestige among commoner wizards to plummet. At this time, the only way to stabilize the situation is to introduce another hero. You think such propaganda seems excessive, but for the entire wizarding world, it's the opposite. The Wizengamot might quickly recover from its decline and take the initiative to build momentum for you. Are you sure? Andre, being a straightforward warrior, didn't fully grasp Anduin's strategy. Don't worry, it's in your best interest. With your overly upright image, the outside world may not link this propaganda directly to you. They might think it's the decision of other high-level ministry officials, Anduin reassured him. Okay, then I'll trust you again. Don't make me look like a vain person in the eyes of others, Andre said helplessly, but still put away the materials out of respect for Anduin. That's right. Remember, as soon as Operation Blind Snake starts, it means you and Pete will completely tear each other apart. If you don't completely uproot him, you'll only leave disaster behind, Anduin warned, aware of the extent to which the Silver Spear had corrupted the German wizarding world. If they didn't seize the opportunity in the high ground of public opinion, Pete might use it to exonerate himself. After giving Andre firm confidence, Anduin turned to Moody. After the warehouse stronghold is cracked by the Ministry of Magic, you will quickly go undercover. I will support you then. We have a few more tough battles ahead, and Director Amelia is already recruiting people. Is it time to confront those Silver Spears? After completing Operation Blind Snake, Moody immediately sensed the tension in the air, a hint of bloodlust evident in his demeanor. He couldn't help but grin. This is also part of Operation Blind Snake, he said. When dealing with Pete and his gang, we must be cautious. He's been in the Ministry of Magic for years, and it's unlikely he's only influenced those 3 directors. If we mishandle any part of this, there could be a mutiny. We need to be ready for a tough fight. Anduin nodded, his eyes fierce with determination. This operation must be swift and decisive. From rescuing the wizards and collecting evidence to conducting trials and making arrests, everything must be executed seamlessly. We can't let any of them escape. Don't worry, Moody assured him. I've already met with them. He exchanged a knowing look with Andre, both of them brimming with fighting spirit. These two were seasoned warriors, unafraid of the battles ahead. After the meeting, Anduin returned to his residence, but didn't rest. He had another crucial task in the coming days, attending the Silverlance's long front meeting as Thunderbird. With only 2 days left before the assembly, he was eager to meet the Golden Snidget for the first time. The Golden Snidget was the most enigmatic member of the Silver Spear, and Anduin was determined to uncover his secrets. Anduin also contemplated placing a tracker on the Golden Snidget. The mask that allowed communication with Thunderbird was still in Pete's possession. So, the Golden Snidget attending the meeting was unlikely to be Pete from the Ministry of Magic. If he could track the Golden Snidget, he might be able to locate the Rune Snake. To this end, Anduin spent considerable time in his alchemy laboratory, creating various lightweight trackers. He designed them to be easily concealed, whether mixed into food or drink, or fashioned into soft needles that could be hidden on the target. 2 days later, as he prepared to head to the Silver Spear headquarters, Anduin had 7 or 8 different trackers ready. He planned to adapt his strategy based on the situation and gather as much information as possible about the Golden Snidget. After making all necessary preparations, Anduin donned his Thunderbird costume, meticulously adjusting his appearance and voice to match Thunderbird's exactly. He couldn't afford to reveal his true identity. Following the same process he used to enter the headquarters last time, Anduin set off once more. End of this chapter. Chapter 527, Changfeng Conference. Come in. Most of the people are already here, just waiting for you, the protagonist. Once again, the fire ash snake leaned out halfway through the portal, waving at Thunderbird and urging him to enter quickly. If you don't come out of the door, I won't go in foolishly, Thunderbird retorted, standing firm in front of the door. He knew exactly what Fire Ash Snake was up to, trying to trick him into walking through the door voluntarily. If he did that, Ash Snake would likely seize the opportunity to teleport him to the middle of a remote desert and laugh at him upon his return. Shh! Am I that unbearable in your mind? Seeing that Thunderbird wasn't falling for the trick, Fire Ash Snake pouted, a bit disappointed. However, he didn't waste any more time and obediently walked out of the door. Thunderbird stepped forward, grabbed Fire Ash Snake's shoulder, and mocked coldly, "Dogs can't change their habit of eating filth, and I think you're the same." "Hiss! You should be more gentle." Ash Snake complained, a bit unhappy, but reluctantly led Thunderbird into the headquarters. The main hall of the headquarters, which doubled as a large indoor duel arena, was still empty. The rest of the attendees must have been waiting in the reception room. "Have all the spears come this time?" Thunderbird asked as he hurriedly walked in, not forgetting to question Fire Ash Snake. "I'm not your secretary," Fire Ash Snake thought, seeing Thunderbird's demeanor as if he owned the place. Anyone who didn't know better might think Thunderbird was the boss and Fire Ash Snake his assistant. Although a bit annoyed, Fire Ash Snake knew Thunderbird's temper well and didn't bother to argue. He just smiled casually. "Everyone who should come has come, and those who didn't show up still haven't. You know their situations better than I do." Thunderbird caught the implication in Ash Snake's words. "That Sphinx guy still didn't attend the meeting? It's been ages since he reported back to headquarters. If you ask me, his spear status should be revoked." "Hey, he's our main source of funds. The leader won't agree to that. But apart from the Sphinx, the Black Dragon didn't come either." "He asked you to represent his opinion," Fire Ash Snake said with a helpless shrug. Thunderbird nodded in understanding. Black Dragon had been managing North American affairs alongside him. The group of Silver Spears, led by Phoenix and Golden Snidget, were all conservatives. They had long forgotten the ideal of being saints and were more focused on maintaining eternal life. Splitting Germany and establishing a breeding park were their goals. Sir Merlin feared these former saints wanted to start a new wave of revolution, but what he didn't realize was that the conservative Silver Spears wanted to split Germany to establish a basic territory. They planned to use this territory to breed magical animals, aiming for a self-sufficient, long life of sustainable development. Thunderbird and Black Dragon had once aspired to restore the glory of the Saint Society and break the shackles of the secrecy law. Unfortunately, they couldn't completely control the direction of the club. The ideas of Golden Snidget and Phoenix were more aligned with the interests of the Rune Snake. They were still very supportive of establishing self-sufficient breeding parks and expanding smuggling routes for magical animals. After all, this was closely related to their lives. Otherwise, Thunderbird wouldn't be in charge of the British transit station. Therefore, although there were ideological conflicts among the 4 veterans, their basic positions were still relatively unified. With the information in his mind, Anduin fully embraced the role of Thunderbird and stepped into the reception room of the headquarters. The room's furnishings had been slightly rearranged, with several sofa chairs forming a circle in the middle. Many people were already seated in these chairs. As Thunderbird entered, all the Silver Spears present turned their heads to look at High. Some merely glanced before resuming their previous postures, while others nodded slightly in greeting. The uppermost seat in the middle was empty, representing the rune snake. Although this leader rarely appeared, a seat was always reserved for him at meetings to show respect. Facing the top, the two seats on the right were also vacant, reserved for Thunderbird and the Black Dragon. The two seats on the left were occupied by the Golden Snidget and the Phoenix. Next to the Phoenix, turning left, sat the Acromantula, who was in charge of the Italian branch. This witch had a good relationship with Phoenix. Both were members of the club's conservative faction and former saints. Like the Sphinx, the Horned Water Serpent, the Witch Bird, and several other silver spears, she was a former student of Thunderbird. Beside her was the Horned Water Serpent, responsible for the Eastern European branches such as Poland and the Czech Republic. He and the Sphinx were also members of the conservative faction, but Anduin had learned from the Sphinx that this person harbored some resentment, though he never showed it. The position next to him belonged to the Sphinx, who was in charge of Egypt, but this seat was also vacant, like the Black Dragons. Additionally, there were the Manticore, in charge of the Spanish and Portuguese branches, Dark Waja, in charge of the Turkish branch, and Vasculus, in charge of the Greek branch. These spears had gradually been promoted after the establishment of the club. They had some connections with the former saints, but not much. The last one was the Wicked Bird, currently in charge of Nordic affairs. Although she was promoted late, she was considered an old member of the club. She had not been promoted to a spear earlier, mainly because Thunderbird liked to keep her close. Later, after Thunderbird went to America, she became a spear through her efforts in cultivating Azalea, a spy for the club. She was also a supporter of Thunderbird and one of the club's radical members. She was the first to nod to him when he entered. After surveying the crowd, Thunderbird walked to the first sofa chair on the upper right and sat down slowly. From beginning to end, he didn't say a word to the people in front of him. Within the Silver Spears, relationships were very complicated. Although everyone belonged to the same organization, they were all on guard against each other, even if their relationships were relatively good. The Fire Ash Snake, who had led Thunderbird in, did not participate in the meeting. To put it bluntly, he was a janitor. Although his status was not low, he was not qualified to participate in the club's decision-making. However, because of his special status, he knew many things. "Since everyone is here, let's officially start this Changfeng meeting," said the Golden Snidget slowly, watching Thunderbird take his seat. When the Rune Snake was not around, he hosted the meeting. As soon as the Golden Snidget finished speaking, the Phoenix, beside him, opened her mouth. "We are not strangers to each other, so let's make a quick decision. I think everyone has their own things to be busy with." She then looked at Thunderbird opposite her. "Thunderbird, I heard that you messed up the British mission. This is not like your style. Explain yourself." "Humph." Thunderbird snorted coldly at her words. "Britain's defeat is not so much caused by my mistakes, but rather by your misjudgment of Britain," Thunderbird began. "How do you explain that?" Phoenix retorted, her tone sharp. "The decision to establish a transfer station in the UK was made at the last Changfeng meeting. You agreed to it then. Why are you blaming us now?" Phoenix's aggression towards Thunderbird was understandable. Her subordinate, Bird Snake, had died in England, and her precious yin body bag was lost. Thunderbird's actions had cost her dearly. Just as Phoenix's anger seemed to peak, Jinfei Xia intervened to calm the situation. "I don't think Thunderbird meant to blame everyone. Since he called for this meeting, he must be an explanation for us, right?" Golden Snidget, who had been observing quietly, turned his gaze to Thunderbird. Unlike Phoenix, he wasn't hostile, but was curious about what had transpired in England that led to Thunderbird's admission of defeat. The club indeed miscalculated the situation in the UK. "This is an indisputable fact," Thunderbird stated firmly, meeting Phoenix's glare without flinching. "There are two forces in the UK that we underestimated from the very beginning." "Oh? Can you elaborate?" Snidget asked, placing a calming hand on Phoenix's arm to prevent another outburst. "Could it be that Dumbledore got involved? According to our previous assessments, he shouldn't have interfered with the Ministry of Magic's affairs." "It's not Dumbledore. I never saw him while I was in England," Thunderbird clarified, shaking his head. The British Ministry of Magic was the primary obstacle to establishing the transfer station, as we had speculated. However, the details were different from what we expected. You mean the British Ministry of Magic was more vigilant about smuggling than we anticipated? The Wicked Bird, seated next to Thunderbird, inquired. Everyone turned their attention to Thunderbird, awaiting his response. Although their smuggling operations were frowned upon in many countries, they were generally not a top priority for the Ministry of Magic. After all, it was just smuggling. This was especially true in the UK, where they were merely passing through and not exploiting local magical animal resources. In theory, they shouldn't have attracted much attention. That's correct, Thunderbird confirmed, nodding solemnly. Minister Budnor took extreme precautions against smuggling, dedicating almost half of the Auror Command's strength to the effort. End of this chapter, Chapter 528, another passage. As Thunderbird spoke, he paused briefly before continuing. When I was in the UK before, my American collaborator was accidentally intercepted by someone from the Ministry of Magic during one of the transfers. Because of this, I activated the unicorn, and with her information, that operation was considered safe and sound. It was during that time we successfully harvested a juvenile Thunderbird. Everyone nodded in understanding. The Spears were well aware of the unicorns. They had decided to train and install spies in England earlier. But that encounter, which we originally thought was just a minor incident, unexpectedly drew significant attention from the Ministry of Magic. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't have caused much concern. After all, smuggling is a business in any country, and it's normal to get caught once or twice. The problem lies with the Thunderbird that was transported. The collaborators left its feathers behind when they escaped. The Ministry of Magic immediately took it seriously after identifying the feathers as belonging to a Thunderbird, Thunderbird said, his tone tinged with irritation, clearly annoyed that his carelessness had attracted the Ministry's attention. Even if it attracted the Ministry's attention, it shouldn't have forced you into a corner. Every country has a Ministry of Magic and Aurors. Are you saying we should stop shipping goods because of this? Phoenix interjected, dissatisfied with the explanation. I haven't finished yet. Why are you interrupting? Thunderbird shot Phoenix a displeased glance before continuing. Indeed, if it was just the British Ministry of Magic's attention, it wouldn't be a big deal. We could simply readjust our transportation strategies and strengthen our defenses. In fact, after that, we managed to avoid the British Ministry of Magic sieges several times. However, this seemed to provoke Minister Budnor's competitiveness. The firm purchased a large number of alchemy props. Among those props was a type of equipment that made tracking easier. It was more effective than ordinary tracking spells. After assembling that equipment, it didn't take long for the collaborators to be caught by the Ministry of Magic and surrounded. As a result, we lost several Peruvian viper tooths. Thunderbird's annoyance grew more intense as he spoke. Silver Flash Trading Company? Is that the alchemy company opened by the young man named Anduin? Jin Facia asked immediately after hearing Thunderbird mention Anduin. That's right. In addition to tracking equipment, that company also provided the British Ministry of Magic with a large number of combat props. Those guys relied on these tools to drive our collaborators into a corner. Our American collaborators suffered heavy losses, Thunderbird cursed angrily. The people around rolled their eyes in exasperation. They knew Thunderbird particularly despised alchemy props, especially those used in battle, considering them external forces. It was no surprise that the British Ministry of Magic's use of these items had made Thunderbird an enemy, causing him great disgust. Anduin revealed his role at this time, mainly because this matter couldn't be hidden for long. As long as the club inquired a bit in England, they would know how much his equipment had played a role. Anduin reckoned that with Golden Snidget's wisdom, he might have suspected him long ago. Now, exposing himself would only strengthen his identity as an alchemist in their minds, making them overlook other aspects of him. Golden Snidget, you just asked about this Silver Flash Trading Company and even mentioned the name of its boss. Do you know this company? Thunderbird inquired, curious about Golden Snidget's knowledge of the firm. Feng Wang was quite familiar with the Silver Flash Trading Company. This company is amazing. Its business has already spread across half of Europe, he explained. Yes, the products sold by this company are very interesting and look fancy. But don't they mostly sell items like magic lamps and gramophones? Do they also have equipment that can be used in battle? Acromantula, who seemed to be a user of Silver Flash Trading Company, added her praise. This firm is indeed unusual, Jinfeixia nodded in agreement. Its business is actually divided into two parts. One part is ordinary products, which are all oriented towards entertainment, and the other part is high-end military equipment. The British Ministry of Magic even procures directly from them. I've seen the kind of tracking equipment that Thunderbird mentioned. It's called tracking glasses. The effect is really strong. It is said that the spell used in it was created by Anduin himself. He even won the Contribution Gold Award at the International Alchemy Conference for it. That guy looks young, but he is indeed an out-and-out alchemy genius. I've seen other equipment produced by their company, and they are all very powerful, Jinfeixia added. Can the club also purchase some for use? The Wicked Bird asked curiously. A lot has been purchased, and they are currently being put into the breeding park. These props are too iconic to be equipped with silver spears, Jinfeixia explained. He then looked at Thunderbird. Did the Ministry of Magic completely block the transportation channel of the transfer station just by relying on the items from the Silver Flash Trading Company? Have you ever tried to personally intervene in the transportation? This is the second item I want to report. The biggest change in the UK transfer station this time is Newt Scamander, Thunderbird sighed irritably. Newt, is there anything special about him? Snidget frowned. I remember the stealth team failed when they went to execute the box operation. Could it be? That's right, Thunderbird nodded. Newt's strength is extraordinary. The 4 members of the stealth team were dealt with silently by him, which resulted in me not being able to receive any messages or contact them at all. And in the next large-scale transfer, I came to report to you that there was a big trouble, Thunderbird gestured to Jinfeixia. Well, you just said that you wanted to try a large-scale transportation, and you borrowed people from the headquarters. You even seconded the birds and snakes from the French branch to go to England, Golden Snidget said, glancing at the phoenix next to him. It was during that large-scale transfer that we fell into the trap of the Ministry of Magic. We were ambushed by the British Ministry of Magic and Newt on the spot, Thunderbird recalled, his fingers tightening on the sofa's armrest. Ambush? Was it at the delivery location or during transportation? Golden Snidget asked, trying to analyze where the error occurred. If there was a problem on the way, it was very likely that there was an insider. It was at the delivery location. The bird snake and I were both on the scene. Those oars hit us hard. More than 20 collaborators were lost on the spot. In the end, the ghost summoned by the bird snake barely resisted them, Thunderbird said in a low tone. Even you couldn't stop those oars? Or is Newt that strong? Golden Snidget knew Thunderbird's strength. If he was around, ordinary oars couldn't stop him at all. Humph, Newt's strength is indeed beyond my imagination. He alone completely held me back, so I couldn't spare time to support the bird snake. Later, when I saw that the situation was not good, I had no choice but to cast Blue Fierce Fire, Thunderbird continued. Thunderbird's frustration was palpable as he recounted his encounter. I still couldn't deal with Newt, even after the Ministry of Magic's high-level support arrived. I barely escaped with the portkey, he said, his anger intensifying. He suddenly raised his hand and slammed the armrest of the sofa with such force that it cracked, the sound echoing through the room. What? You failed to take down Newt with the blue fiend fire? The surprise was evident on the faces of everyone present, including the Golden Snidget, the Phoenix, and the Akantara. They all knew Thunderbird's strength, G8th, too well. Although some were reluctant to admit it, they all recognized that in a head-on fight, Thunderbird was the strongest in their club. Since then, I've been obsessed with revenge, determined to wash away the shame of defeat. But the results have been disappointing. I confronted Newt again this year, but still couldn't completely defeat him. He managed to hold out until help arrived, Thunderbird continued, his voice filled with frustration. I knew Newt would be a serious problem. I should have dealt with him before he grew stronger, if only. Golden Snidget and Phoenix exchanged knowing glances. They remembered the events involving the Saints Association and Newt. He had been a thorn in their side, fighting against the Saints in Grindelwald. It was Newt who had exposed Grindelwald's disguise at the Magical Congress of America and captured him. I didn't expect him to be so strong after all these years, Phoenix mused. I thought he had forgotten how to fight, being so engrossed in his magizoology research after getting married and starting a family. Phoenix's understanding of the situation was tinged with melancholy. He knew that Thunderbird had taken the fall for him, not because Anduin had tricked the old man, but to ensure the club recognized Newt's strength and guaranteed his safety. No one would provoke a wizard as powerful as Thunderbird. This also added credibility to their story. If they had claimed Anduin had blocked Thunderbird, it would have seemed unbelievable and unreasonable. After Thunderbird finished recounting the events surrounding the establishment of a transfer station in the UK, everyone finally understood the full story. Golden Snidget sighed. So, after failing to gain the upper hand in 2 fights, you decided to abandon the strategy of building a British transit station? End of this chapter. Chapter 529, A New Transit Station. Then the problem now is that the club has been exposed to the eyes of the British Ministry of Magic. Newt is no stranger to us, and they will not let us continue to develop in the UK, Phoenix said, quickly realizing the crux of the matter. Everyone nodded in agreement. They knew better than to confront local officials directly, and none of them wanted to be the first to take the risk. Even the most powerful Thunderbird in the club had already retreated. Understood. Although Thunderbird, as the person in charge, cannot absolve himself of the responsibility for the mission of the British transfer station, the incident's cause is understandable. Thunderbird's report aligns with what we have learned so far, Jin Facia summarized, scanning the crowd. Therefore, I propose not to punish Thunderbird for the time being. If you agree, please raise your hands to vote. Agree. Agree. I have no objections. Everyone at the scene unanimously passed Jin Facia's verdict, including Phoenix, who had initially blamed Thunderbird. They had experienced many turmoils over the years, and a minor setback wouldn't deter them. This form of group voting was a more humane aspect of the club. Generally, when making important decisions affecting the club's future, or when appointing, dismissing, or punishing spear-level members, all votes were required. Those who did not attend the meeting would automatically abstain. However, Thunderbird and Black Dragon were special cases. One of them had to guard the Americas. Therefore, at the Changfeng meeting, they usually took turns participating, allowing the participants to have 2 votes. Even though Thunderbird didn't stay at the headquarters, he was well aware of the club's decision to establish a breeding park because he was present when the decision was made. The reason Thunderbird wasn't clear about Jin Facia splitting the German headquarters or the details was that Black Dragon represented the previous meeting to discuss relevant decisions. With Thunderbird's character, he didn't care much about these matters and didn't ask Black Dragon for more details. In fact, Black Dragon was similar, so he didn't know much about the situation in the local breeding parks in Germany. This was also why the directors accepted Jin Facia's instigation. Jin Facia was one of the few people seduced by the 2 privileges of the spear. One naturally represented the elixir of life, and the other was the club's decision-making power. Only when they became spears could they be considered to have entered the club's power center. Otherwise, they wouldn't have worked so hard for the club. The day the 3 directors truly became spears would be when the club could completely control a country. But without Britain's advantageous geographical environment, our goods from the Americas can't be shipped back now. I don't think there is a problem with the strategy of the transfer station. Now, we have to open up a new stronghold, the Acromantula eagerly proposed. As a silver spear who had used the elixir very early, she was very concerned about anything affecting her family's life. Indeed, the establishment of the transfer station cannot be stopped. Phoenix nodded in agreement, then looked at Jin Facia. Is it possible to choose another place to establish a transfer channel? Jin Facia was silent for a moment, then turned his head to the right. Manticore, Is the Spanish Ministry of Magic's blockade of the Mediterranean Sea still so strict? The Manticore, who had been silent, finally spoke up. The masked figure shook his head slowly, and a young male voice emerged from behind the mask. It's not just the Ministry of Magic. The influence of the Holy See hasn't waned either. Smuggling from the Americas is one thing, but getting something out of Egypt is incredibly difficult. If you don't believe me, ask Phoenix and Akantara. They should understand this well. Indeed, Acromantula nodded in agreement. She was in charge of Italy, the homeland of the Holy See. They are strict about cracking down on smuggling to and from Egypt. The blockade on entry and exit is formidable. It's easier to go to Spain or the Mediterranean, but problems still arise. Phoenix also nodded. France's waters are always closely monitored. Setting up a transfer station in southern Europe isn't a good idea. In the European wizarding world, aside from the Silver Spears who specialize in magical animal smuggling, there are many other smuggling crimes, most of which are concentrated along the Mediterranean coast, adjacent to Egypt, a major trade and alchemy hub. Many people take the risk of smuggling alchemy products. The ministries of magic in countries along the Mediterranean are very strong in combating smuggling and often cooperate with law enforcement. When caught smuggling there, aurors from several countries would come together, and they would eliminate you before even discussing distribution issues. This is a significant problem for the Silver Spears. They may not be targeting you specifically, but if discovered, they won't let it go. This is a disaster for the club. Because of this, the club has never asked the Sphinx in Egypt to smuggle magical animals. While some might be willing to take the risk, no one else in the club dares to accept it. Then what about opening a branch in Eastern Europe? We can rely on the goods and breeding parks scattered across various countries to persist for a while, Jin Facia suggested, looking at the horned water snake next to him. The horned water snake smiled leisurely. You should ask the Nangdu leopard who died before, and his predecessor. I heard the club recently recruited a new Nangdu leopard. How about sending him to Eastern Europe to try? Jin Snidget didn't respond to the horned water snake's sarcastic tone, but Thunderbird turned back first. Now I'm asking if it's possible to establish a branch in Eastern Europe. No one wants to hear your snide remarks, or do you want to end up like the last sack leopard? Hearing Thunderbird's threat, the horned water snake sneered indifferently. Teacher, you just messed up the British transit station, and you have the nerve to accuse me? You still have the face to call me teacher? Thunderbird's voice was tinged with anger. If all my students were as useless as you, the club would have been gone long ago. I've heard about it. The goods shipped from your side have never been complete. If you could do your job properly, would the club need to work so hard to build a transfer station? Thunderbird's voice rose, and he cursed at the horned water snake condescendingly. The rest of the Silver Spears, hidden behind their masks, looked uncomfortable. Thunderbird's words had implicated them all, as their shipments to the headquarters were also lacking. We're not as good as you. You and the Black Dragon are used to calling the shots in America and aren't accustomed to the pettiness of Europe. But if your goods can't be shipped back, what then? The horned water snake retorted without showing any weakness. At the club, nobody liked the Thunderbirds. That's enough. Stop arguing. We're discussing business now. Don't change the subject, someone interjected, trying to bring the focus back to the matter at hand. Jin Facia noticed the sudden confrontation between the two men and realized that if he didn't intervene, they might end up fighting again. To be honest, when Thunderbird was still in Europe, such situations were common, and Jin Facia often found himself playing the role of peacemaker. This scene brought back some painful memories for him. Seeing Jin Facia step in, the horned water snake decided not to continue arguing with Thunderbird. He spoke seriously. The situation in Eastern Europe remains unchanged, and it's difficult to operate there for an extended period. Re-establishing a branch will take at least 3 to 5 years to stabilize. That's too slow, Jin Facia replied, shaking his head regretfully. 3 to 5 years is enough time for the German differentiation strategy to be implemented. By then, we should have a long-term transfer station at the headquarters. We need to focus on short-term supply. Turning his attention to the wicked bird, Jin Facia continued, "In this case, we can only start from Northern Europe. Although the situation there is also challenging, the official resistance is the least." Northern Europe. The wicked bird felt a pang of bitterness. This was like being thrown into the fire. Reluctantly, she said, "I'm not in a good position here. Although the Pure Land Society isn't an official force, they're a bunch of ruthless individuals. The previous head of the Nordic branch didn't even confront them directly. Just..." Northern Europe, like Eastern Europe, was notorious for its tough conditions. The branches in these regions suffered the most losses. After the spears in Eastern Europe died a few years ago, they hadn't been replaced, making the wicked bird even more reluctant. You don't need to fully set up the transfer station, you just need to open a temporary transportation channel. This is very important. Jin Facia said firmly, ignoring the wicked bird's rebuttal. "Well, I'll do my best," the wicked bird conceded. As a new spear, she hadn't taken the elixir yet, so she wasn't as urgent as the others. "It's not about doing your best, you must do it." Jin Facia's tone became more determined. Northern Europe will enter winter in a few months, and transportation will become even more difficult. We don't have much time. Isn't this impossible?" the wicked bird complained, casting a hopeful glance at Thunderbird, hoping he would support her. "Temporary transfer stations are indeed necessary," Thunderbird said, siding with the club. "America doesn't have the same level of care for magical animals as the headquarters breeding park. If we delay too long, many magical animals will be lost in vain." However, Thunderbird didn't completely dismiss his old subordinate. "I understand your difficulties. I won't return to America too soon. If you encounter any problems in Northern Europe, I can help you." Realizing that the matter was settled, the wicked bird had no choice but to agree. End of this chapter. Chapter 530. The Big Thing is Bad. Hearing what Thunderbird said, Jin Facia and Feng Wang heaved a sigh of relief. Although Thunderbird has a bad temper, he is still a veteran of the club and knows how to take care of the overall situation. With him overseeing the wicked bird, the success rate of establishing a temporary transfer station in Northern Europe would undoubtedly be higher. In the club, it is rare for two spears to perform tasks together. Even Thunderbird and Black Dragon in America usually handle their own affairs. However, with the elixir involved, these two should be able to cooperate well. "Very well. Then the matter is settled," Golden Snidget declared. "The transportation channel will be established within 2 months. At least one transshipment must be completed from Northern Europe, and the goods from the Americas will be released to the headquarters. This will also relieve the breeding park. After all, it is prepared for the future, so if possible, don't waste money." Golden Snidget made the final decision and then looked at Thunderbird. "I know you want to see the rune snake. I have already conveyed your intention to the leader, but he is very disappointed with your failure in Britain. If this Nordic strategy succeeds, he might come forward in person." "That's the best," Thunderbird nodded. "The leader hasn't shown up for too long. If he doesn't appear soon, I might wonder if he's already been killed by you." Hearing Thunderbird tease the leader of the club and Snidget so openly, everyone froze behind their masks and glanced at Snidget from the corner of their eyes. They were also curious about the current situation of the leader. This rune snake and all the spears have a mutually beneficial relationship. They provide magical animals, and the rune snake supplies them with elixirs. But the rune snake has not appeared in the sight of these spears for many years. Is the rune snake still alive? Is the person who controls the club the leader or Golden Snidget? In fact, they didn't care whether the rune snake was alive or dead. What they cared about was the formula for the elixir. If Golden Snidget had mastered the formula, did that mean they could too? These dark thoughts circled in their minds, but they didn't show it at all. The straightforward Thunderbird in front of them was willing to be the leader. In fact, everyone was very happy in their hearts. It would be better for him to confirm the situation of the rune snake. But hearing Thunderbird arrange himself so presumptuously, Jin Facia acted very magnanimously. "It's up to you to judge the truth. I have no way to influence the rune snake's thoughts. Otherwise, I would have let him show up to save me from having to face so many doubts all the time." Having said that, Jin Feixia glanced at the others, knowing that all the guys in front of him had their own ulterior motives. Then, he looked at Thunderbird equally teasingly. Maybe after meeting him again, you can kill him with your own hands. If you get the formula from him at that time, don't forget to share it with our old friends. Hearing Jin Feixia and Thunderbird speak so outrageously in front of so many people, everyone's hearts tensed up. Their bodies dared not move, and the air in the room seemed to freeze. Even the Huohui snake, who was listening on the sidelines, was dripping with cold sweat. These two guys, are they really worthy of being the veterans of the club? They don't even have a sliver of nominal respect for the leader. Just when everyone thought that these two were about to make some shocking remarks, Snidget and Thunderbird laughed simultaneously. Golden Snidget, you are still so good at telling jokes. I thought all these years had exhausted your sense of humor. Thunderbird laughed aloud and joked again. It's the same for you. It seems you have more than just muscles in your brain. Jin Snidget responded with a chuckle. After the two laughed heartily, the tension in the room eased, allowing everyone to breathe a sigh of relief. However, it was unclear how much of their so-called joke was true and how much was false. Okay, it's getting late. Today's Changfeng meeting is adjourned. Boom! Just as the atmosphere was calming and Jin Feixia was about to announce the end of the meeting, the door burst open. A panting silver spear rushed in. Everyone turned their heads to see another silver gun, Transformer Lizard, stationed at the headquarters. Before anyone could ask what was happening, the Transformer Lizard shouted, "Something terrible has happened in the breeding park." Everyone immediately stood up, including Jin Snidget and Thunderbird, who had been confronting each other moments before. What's the situation? Is someone attacking the breeding park? Thunderbird's voice was sharp as he quickly drew his wand from his waist. No, it's not an attack. The park, it's gone. The Transformer Lizard stammered, clearly flustered. What do you mean the park is gone? Such a large place can't just disappear. Which park are you talking about? Jin Feixia asked, trying to remain composed. The Transformer Lizard shook its head violently, its body trembling slightly. It's not just one park, it's all the parks. Explain clearly and slowly, Thunderbird demanded, sensing the gravity of the situation. Right, the Transformer Lizard swallowed hard. Following Snidget's instructions today, I contacted several park managers to prepare to receive the first batch of goods from the park. Jin Feixia nodded. That was true. To make the elixir, some older magical animals needed to be shipped out from the 3 parks. Today was the delivery day. But when I contacted those managers, they seemed to have disappeared and couldn't be reached. Sensing something was wrong, I rushed to Park Number 1 to check, and it turned out that there was no one in Park No. 1. Not only were the staff missing, but all the magical animals had disappeared into thin air. The Transformer Lizard reported, panting heavily. What about the other 2 parks? Jin Feixia asked, realizing the severity of the situation. The Transformer Lizard shook its head in disappointment. They're all gone. The 3 parks are exactly the same. No humans, no magical animals left. What? Jin Feixia felt as if he had been struck by a heavy hammer. His body nearly collapsed, but he instinctively grabbed the sofa chair next to him to steady himself. The news sent a shiver through everyone present. They all knew how crucial the breeding parks were. They represented the future of the club and their own futures. While everyone was stunned by the news, Thunderbird stepped forward. Don't just stand there in a daze. We need to go to the parks immediately to confirm what happened and see if there's any chance to save them. Thunderbird then grabbed Jin Feixia by the collar and lifted him up. Snap out of it. You know the situation at the headquarters best. Now is when we need you the most. Don't just stand there pretending to be dead. After saying this, Thunderbird let go and pushed Jin Feixia aside, rushing out of the reception room first. Yes, we need to go to the scene and see the situation first, Jin Feixia muttered, trying to regain his composure. After being scolded by Thunderbird, Jin Feixia regained his composure and immediately rushed out. At this moment, everyone was in a state of confusion. Seeing someone take the lead, they followed suit, as if grasping at a life-saving straw. This included the deformed lizard who had initially reported the news. Soon, only the fire ash snake, who was in charge of guarding the headquarters, remained. He paced around in a panic, muttering to himself, how is it possible that the 3 parks disappeared in the blink of an eye? If these magical animals are really gone, what will happen to the elixir? After chanting for a while, Ash Snake suddenly raised his head and muttered, it's over. The club is in big trouble. These spears are not to be underestimated. A while later, a group of spears apparated to the area of Park Number 1. The shielding spell that had covered the area had dissipated after the shape-shifting lizard broke in, leaving only a silent park. The faces of those who saw this scene turned grim. They could see with their naked eyes that there was no life within. After everyone gathered, Thunderbird turned and said, Golden Snidget, Phoenix, and I will go inside to see what's going on. The rest of you stay on guard outside in case there's an ambush. Everyone was stunned at first, but then nodded in unanimous agreement. The breeding park had been swept clean. Whoever did this must have targeted the club. Everyone was gone. After a brief explanation, Thunderbird drew his wand and walked slowly inward. Snidget and Phoenix separated on both sides and followed closely. However, the 3 of them traveled all the way to the core residential area without encountering any attacks or even the feeling of being watched. What they saw chilled Jinfacia and Phoenix to the bone. All the magical animal enclosures were empty, and even the weather blankets covering them had been removed. The houses in the residential area were still there, but they were all empty. Not even a sound could be heard. The most frightening thing was that neither the residential areas nor the roads showed any signs of battle, as if everything in the park had simply evaporated. Chapter 531. Infighting? Ahead, when they saw the demolished core hub, now reduced to just a foundation, their expressions turned grim. Did you find anything? Thunderbird asked, circling the ruins of the central spire before turning to the 2 people beside him. All living things have disappeared, and no traces of battle have been found. It seems all traces have been meticulously cleaned up. The ruins before us are the protective core of the park, and they've been demolished. The other party came prepared, Jinfacia said, picking up a piece of residue, squeezing it in his hands, and then angrily throwing it to the ground. You know the situation here best. Is there anyone who could easily break through the protection here? Feng Huang asked. Although she often returned to assist Jinfacia, the breeding park had always been under his charge, so she was not familiar with its defenses. Impossible. The protection here is very sound. No one can break through without alarming the guards. The core circle for guarding was built with significant resources and money from the club. It can resist an attack for at least half an hour, giving us enough time to respond, Jinfacia replied, his heart bleeding. He had spent at least 20 years of savings from the Silver Spear to build these 3 parks, and now it was all gone, like a bubble that had burst. His expression under the mask became ferocious. All the way here, I didn't notice any signs of resistance from the internal guards. It's impossible for so many people to disappear out of thin air, Thunderbird said, nodding slightly as if deep in thought. If everything you said is true, then there must be an inside man. Thunderbird stared blankly at Jinfacia, as if trying to discern something from him. Jinfacia noticed Thunderbird's strange behavior and immediately glared at him angrily. What are you looking at me for? I didn't attack the park. As soon as he said the words, his heart skipped a beat. Thunderbird must have suspected him. In fact, it wasn't just Jinfacia and Thunderbird. Feng Huang also realized something and stared at Jinfacia with a strange expression. Thunderbird snorted coldly. You always assured us that the defense of these parks was impeccable. Now that there's such a big mistake, how do you explain it? If it was done by an insider, ordinary insiders couldn't have done this. The park looks less attacked and more like it was evacuated in an orderly manner. Who else could do this besides you? Thunderbird said, his wand gently hanging by his side as he slowly approached Jinfacia. Jinfacia's eyes narrowed into slits. Thunderbird was not only staring at him, but was also ready to fight. If he found anything suspicious, he had no doubt that Thunderbird would attack directly. At the same time, Jinfacia could clearly sense that Feng Huang had circled behind him. It seemed the two had reached a consensus in just a moment. Thunderbird, now is not the time for you to go crazy. What reason would I have to do such a thing? Jinfacia knew that if he couldn't dispel their suspicion today, things might not go well. Reason? How about monopolizing the resources of the breeding park alone? Thunderbird snorted coldly. Rune snakes don't show up at all now. Who knows if you've mastered the formula of the elixir? With that kind of thing, you wouldn't need people like us. Use your brain. If I wanted to do this, why would I pick this time? Jinfacia shouted. Jinfacia spoke a little excitedly. I've spent so much time building this park. Keeping it will benefit you, me, and the club. According to our previous plan, in the near future, we won't lack magical animals. Do you think I'd be so foolish as to sabotage my own efforts? Thunderbird's tone softened slightly, but he still eyed Jinfacia with suspicion. If it's not you causing trouble, then who? It doesn't look like this place has been attacked. Even the park managers, are they capable of something like this? Jinfacia responded firmly. What we need to do now is investigate, not fight, among ourselves. The person responsible is either an insider or an enemy of the club. Are you sure you want to fight me now? And, Jinfacia's tone grew colder, if I had planned all this, do you think the two of you could stop me? As he finished speaking, a powerful wave of magic surged from Jinfacia, matching the intensity of Thunderbird's blue fiend fire. Instinctively, Thunderbird and Phoenix released their own magic fields. The three waves of magic power were as striking as three flames in the night, spreading outward and pushing everything away until they collided and blended together. The stalemate lasted about 10 seconds before Thunderbird's magic field relaxed, prompting Golden Snidget and Phoenix to withdraw their magic as well. It doesn't seem like he's lying, Thunderbird said, glancing at Phoenix. Indeed, I can sense his composure in his magic, Phoenix agreed. With their level of strength, they could detect many subtleties through the touch of magic. Phoenix then looked at Thunderbird. Your magic has become wilder, like being struck by lightning in a storm. It seems your strength has improved. Thunderbird chuckled. And your magic is still as unsettling as walking into a cemetery at midnight. He then calmly put away his wand, no longer targeting Golden Snidget aggressively. Seeing the two chatting as if he were invisible, Jinfacia felt a twinge of annoyance, but knew he had cleared himself of suspicion. Since the misunderstanding is temporarily resolved, what should we do next? Anduin emphasized the word temporary, reminding Jinfacia that he wasn't fully convinced. Jinfacia didn't mind and replied, we need to find the missing people and magical animals. Do you have any clues? Moving so many people and animals without anyone noticing is no small feat. It can't be done by just one or two people, Phoenix said, scanning the empty park they had worked so hard to build. Jinfacia nodded. There must be an insider, but whether they're in the club or the park, I don't know. So many magical animals and people can't just vanish. There must be a place where they're being kept. A week ago, I met with the park managers, so they couldn't have been transported too far. We might still be able to recover them if we act quickly. Where's the target? Thunderbird immediately asked after hearing the news. Who is against us? Do you have anyone in mind? The most likely suspect is Andre from the Department of Legal Enforcement of the Ministry of Magic, Jin Snidget speculated. But to be honest, he doesn't seem capable of orchestrating all this. There aren't many candidates left. It could be someone from the Wizengamot or a wizarding family. Is it possible that it's a foreign force? Thunderbird pointed towards the southeast. For example, some old friends from over there? You mean other saints? Golden Snidget's eyes narrowed sharply. They usually guard Grindelwald, so they wouldn't act casually. That's not necessarily the case, Anduin, under the Thunderbird mask, interjected. If people from the Ministry of Magic were involved, they wouldn't use such sneaky methods. If there's anyone in the world who hates us more, it would be the people in Austria. As Thunderbird said, it's not impossible, Phoenix added. The saints of our generation are very stubborn, and many of them see us as traitors. Jin Snidget's mind was a bit muddled by the conversation. He shook his head vigorously. No matter what, the most important thing is to find those lost magical animals first. The identity of the mastermind will become clear once we find the people and the goods. That's a good point, Thunderbird nodded in approval. Following this clue, we need to thoroughly investigate all places in Germany that could house so many people and magical animals. Such a large-scale movement is likely to have witnesses, so we should also pay attention to that. At the same time, we should look for anyone or any organization buying large quantities of food, drinking water, and medicine. It's impossible for so many living creatures not to need sustenance, especially magical animals. Hearing Thunderbird's suggestions, both Golden Snidget and Phoenix nodded in agreement. End of this chapter. Chapter 532, Fanning the Flames. In addition, Phoenix interjected at this moment, I will also start investigating the Silver Spear and those collaborators within the club. The problem must lie with them. That's right, especially the managers of those parks. Where did you find these people? They can't even send out a message at a critical moment. They can't all be defectors, right? Thunderbird expressed his dissatisfaction, looking pointedly at Golden Snidget. They are not all my people. The managers of the East German Park were selected by Phoenix. As for the two managers of the West German Park, I will take responsibility for checking them. Golden Snidget replied, though he was reluctant to believe that the collaborators he had cultivated over the years would betray him. Of course, I will also investigate my people, Phoenix retorted, rolling his eyes at Golden Snidget. But in addition to the relevant persons in charge, we also need to thoroughly investigate those employees working in the park, especially the patrol team members. In this way, there are too many things to investigate, and the manpower at the headquarters is very tight, Golden Snidget said helplessly, looking at the other two. I understand. I will send people from the French branch to cooperate, Phoenix responded, knowing that Golden Snidget was hinting at needing more personnel. The unicorn is currently not needed in the UK. If necessary, I can ask her to come back to support, Thunderbird added. Golden Snidget nodded in satisfaction. Judging from the current situation, the Silver Spears recalled from outside seemed more reliable. Thunderbird seemed to remember something and looked at Golden Snidget. Now that the club has suffered such a significant loss, will it affect your strategy in Germany? Golden Snidget knew Thunderbird was referring to the plan to split Germany and that Thunderbird didn't know much about it. There will definitely be some impact. First of all, those park managers and some personnel are part of the German civil forces. Without them, it becomes very difficult to push civil society to incite people. Then will this affect the advancement of the division bill? Phoenix asked, feeling a headache coming on. This is not good news. You should know how important it is for us to divide Germany. The park strategy and the division bill complement each other. Now, with so many resources lost, if Germany's division process is also hindered, then the elixir. Golden Snidget knew how tricky the situation was. It was related to their survival and the direction the club had been working on for the past 10 years. The thought of it made him angry again. Golden Snidget could barely restrain his emotions, but Thunderbird couldn't. It means that it has already affected the foundation of our existence. This can't be allowed to continue. Thunderbird clenched his fists in fury and shouted, Can't we find a way to speed up the progress of the damn bill you mentioned? Where is the resistance? If necessary, use some special measures. The so-called special measures naturally referred to the use of force. What Anduin aimed to do now was to use the issues in the park to keep the club in turmoil. If it could cause internal strife or make them use force in their desperation, it would be great to expose their own strength. When confronting Golden Snidget earlier, Anduin had thought of taking this opportunity to provoke internal strife, ideally pitting Golden Snidget against Thunderbird. However, the strength Golden Snidget displayed was beyond his expectations. He could indeed feel the emotion symbolizing calmness from Golden Snidget's magic power. This guy was not afraid of him at all. That's why Anduin finally chose to give up. Otherwise, if there had been a real fight, During this period, I will find a way to solve the raw material problem. Trust me, I have been working on this for a long time, and I won't let our efforts go to waste. Thunderbird's eyes narrowed, still skeptical. Half a year? That's not much time. What if you can't find a solution by then? Jinfeixia's expression hardened. I will find a way. I have some leads that I am following up on. But you must understand, rushing things now will only lead to disaster. We need to be patient and strategic. Feng Wang nodded thoughtfully. All right, Jin Feixia, we will give you this time. But remember, the stakes are high. If you fail, it won't just be the club that suffers. Jin Feixia nodded solemnly. I understand. I won't let you down. The tension in the room eased slightly, but the underlying unease remained. Anduin, observing the exchange, realized the precarious balance of power within the club. He needed to tread carefully if he wanted to achieve his own goals. As the meeting concluded, Jin Feixia dismissed the group, and they began to disperse. Anduin lingered for a moment, watching Jin Feixia closely. There was more to this man than met the eye, and Anduin was determined to uncover his secrets. Outside, Thunderbird and Feng Wang walked together, their expressions serious. Do you really think he can pull this off? Thunderbird asked, his voice low. Feng Wang sighed. I don't know, but we don't have much choice. We need to support him for now and hope that he can deliver. If he fails, we'll have to find another way. Thunderbird grunted in agreement. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. As they parted ways, Anduin followed at a distance, his mind racing with possibilities. The club was on the brink of a major upheaval, and he needed to be ready for whatever came next. Back in his quarters, Jin Feixia sat alone, deep in thought. The pressure was immense, and the stakes were higher than ever. He knew that one wrong move could bring everything crashing down, but he also knew that he couldn't afford to fail. The future of the club, and perhaps even more, depended on his success. With a determined look, he began to formulate a plan. He would need to be cunning and resourceful, but he was confident that he could find a way to secure the raw materials they needed. And if he played his cards right, he might even be able to turn the situation to his advantage. As the night wore on, Jin Feixia worked tirelessly, his mind racing with ideas and strategies. He knew that the coming months would be critical, and he was determined to be ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. As long as we recover the lost magical animals within this period, or replenish enough new ones, the supply of the undead medicine can continue, Thunderbird explained. Phoenix and Thunderbird exchanged glances and then nodded silently, accepting the situation. They understood that within half a year, whether by recovering the lost magical animals or gathering new raw materials, it was not entirely impossible. Given this, we need to re-strategize and find ways to increase income and reduce expenditure, Thunderbird said, a hint of irritation in his voice. Jin Feixia, you and Phoenix will be responsible for recovering those magical animals and handling strategic issues in Germany. I will head to Northern Europe immediately to establish a new transport channel for magical animals as quickly as possible. Jin Feixia and Phoenix nodded in agreement. Thunderbird's plan was undoubtedly the most appropriate course of action. Additionally, Golden Snidget interjected, we can't rely solely on Northern Europe. The scale and frequency of smuggling by our branches in other countries must also increase. Even if it's challenging, they need to take the lead now. This is a matter of life and death. Agreed, Phoenix nodded, but then asked tentatively, but to stabilize the morale of the spears, shouldn't we allow them to exchange for a season of elixir? Thunderbird looked at Golden Snidget, who nodded reluctantly. Although he felt pressured by the two in front of him, he knew this was necessary to maintain the army's morale. If the spears discovered they couldn't exchange the elixir at headquarters, it would lead to the club's complete collapse. Then everything will proceed as we discussed, Jin Feixia said, glancing at the two. When we negotiate with them, we must remain composed and not show any signs of instability. Phoenix nodded in agreement, understanding that Thunderbird had likely asked others to wait outside the park to communicate with them in advance. Wait, Thunderbird called softly as the two were about to leave. Recovering those magical animals and reopening the transportation route won't be easy. If, and I mean if, the club still doesn't receive enough raw materials, what should we do then? End of this chapter. Chapter 533, Hidden Agendas. Still not enough. Golden Snidget looked at Thunderbird meaningfully after hearing his words. What do you mean? Other than increasing our resources, we need to cut down on expenses. Controlling the production of the elixir might be a way, Thunderbird replied, his tone carrying a hint of menace. Control production? What exactly do you want to do? Golden Snidget sensed the murderous intent in Thunderbird's voice and vaguely guessed his intentions. Except for the Sphinx and the Wretch, the rest of the spears need to receive the elixir regularly. If the elixir supply runs out, we can consider reducing some of the expenses, Thunderbird said coldly. His meaning was clear. If there were fewer spears, the amount of elixir needed would decrease, allowing the remaining supply to be distributed among fewer people. The club's tight supply was partly due to the bloated team of spears, including the rune snakes and 3 silver spears. They had to spend 8 more elixirs every quarter. That's 12 bottles every 6 months, which is not a small expense. You mean to get rid of the other spearmen? It would be bad if people found out we were doing such a thing. Golden Snidget stared at Thunderbird in surprise. Phoenix hastily added, "Indeed, are you sure you can do it without anyone noticing?" From their words, it was clear how ruthless these club veterans were. They were asking if Thunderbird could do it, not whether it should be done. In their eyes, the other spears in the club were expendable. As a last resort, we can only go this way. Giving up 1 or 2 people can relieve a lot of pressure, Thunderbird snorted coldly. And if we don't act first, we might become the targets. Overthinking will only delay us. Thunderbird has a point, Phoenix nodded. I don't believe those guys will sit idly by. They might already be using the mask to send messages and unite. Be careful. Golden Snidget's heart trembled at these words. They had sent the rest of the spears into the park to prevent an ambush and to communicate and form a united front. But the other spears were not fools. They might realize this and use the opportunity to ally with each other. Golden Snidget sighed inwardly. After staying at the headquarters for so long, had his sense of crisis dulled to the point where Thunderbird and Phoenix had to remind him? I understand. If the situation changes, I will contact you immediately, Golden Snidget said. By change in the situation, he meant a problem with the elixir production. If there was a shortage, they would have to act quickly and decisively. That's the best way. Besides, be more cautious recently and watch out for any plots against you, Thunderbird said pointedly. Do you think they would dare to attack us first? Golden Snidget sneered in disbelief. No, you can't be too careful, especially after something big happened to the club, Phoenix shook his head anxiously. Remember, they don't know the cards we hold. That's why I proposed exchanging for the elixir in advance. Who knows what they're thinking now? Can you guarantee that people on the brink of extinction will still think rationally? Also, Thunderbird added, looking specifically at the other 2, at least the 3 of us are on the same front. Don't let me find out that you're secretly contacting any of them. After hearing Thunderbird's words, the other 2 fell silent. Seeing their reaction, Thunderbird grinned coldly. Sure enough, they each had their own hidden agendas. He guessed correctly. These 2 must have had similar thoughts about winning over those familiar spears. Conversely, they might have been making some small moves behind the scenes. Don't worry, Jinfacia said firmly. Compared to them, I am more willing to cooperate with you. Based on your strength, even if I join forces with others, I don't have the confidence to absolutely defeat you. The last sentence was the truth, Thunderbird and Phoenix thought to themselves. Anduin didn't care if they had other thoughts in their minds. What he wanted was to disrupt the club, and these guys seemed eager to collude and fight each other. After the 3 of them discussed their countermeasures, they turned around and left the park, joining the other spearmen. A strong wave of magic suddenly broke out in the park just now. Could it be that we encountered an enemy? We didn't intervene because we didn't receive a signal from Thunderbird. Did you find anything? Bayan, the giant spider, looked very anxious. It was clear she valued her own life very much. Jinfacia shook his head. There is nothing to gain. The entire park has been completely emptied. He didn't respond to the previous wave of magic power fluctuations, but simply stated their discoveries and speculations. He also explained the deployment they had thought of. After listening to Jinfacia's narration, the others looked at each other. No one knew what they were thinking at that moment. However, no one objected to the decision made by Jinfacia and the others. After confirming their next course of action, they left the scene quickly, as if running for their lives. Seeing their actions, Jin Feixia knew that these people had ulterior motives. Perhaps Thunderbird had guessed that they might have already connected with each other. But at this moment, he didn't have the time to intrigue with them. The most important thing now was to recover those magical animals. As long as the goods could be recovered, he believed that the club could return to its previous state. "Don't let me find out who is against me." Jin Feixia cursed under his breath, then quickly left the scene. To prevent the parks from being discovered by Muggles, the shape-shifting lizard had to cast a spell on them again to hide the parks, making them disappear. Phoenix also left in a hurry after finishing the conversation. Only the Wicked Bird was stopped by Thunderbird after a brief meeting of spears. "Teacher, do you have any other orders?" After everyone left, the Wicked Bird turned to look at Thunderbird. She hadn't been a spear for long, so she habitually used her previous address to refer to Thunderbird. "After the three of us left, did those three guys change anything?" Thunderbird asked in a low voice. "A change?" Wicked Bird frowned and pondered for a moment. They occasionally chatted or complained a few words at the beginning, but after that, they all fell silent without saying a word, as if they had discussed it. "Silent?" Thunderbird sneered. It seemed that these spears did use masks to communicate with each other. He didn't know what kind of thoughts they had, whether they were united or just waiting to see what would happen. But Anduin didn't care about these things. The more chaotic the club, the better. He didn't mind adding fuel to the fire. It would be best if 1 or 2 people died in the club during this time. Thinking of this, he looked at the Wicked Bird next to him with a smile in his eyes, but spoke sternly. "Return to Northern Europe immediately. Wait for my news, and at the same time, pay attention to collecting information on the local wizard community. Focus on those from the Pure Land Society." "So urgent. Teacher, is the loss of magical animals so serious this time?" Wicked Bird was not a fool. Seeing Thunderbird's eagerness, she also realized that something was wrong. Thunderbird had not yet utilized the undead medicine, nor had it produced the sense of oppression that comes from life and death. He nodded, not hiding his words. "This time, the club has suffered significant losses, even damaging our foundation. At this juncture, you should be cautious not to be deceived by others, and don't rush to report to the headquarters. If you don't take the Immortal medicine, you won't be in immediate danger." "Dangerous? Is the situation that serious?" Wicked Bird was startled by Thunderbird's words. It seemed like there was going to be a civil war within the club. However, she quickly agreed. "I understand, teacher. If someone contacts me secretly, I will report to you immediately. As for the Nordic side, it's not that I'm discouraged, but it will be difficult to make progress in the short term. Extreme times call for extraordinary measures. The club urgently needs supplies, and everything else must take a back seat." A sinister laugh came from beneath Thunderbird's mask. "I heard that the people from the Pure Land Association are very extreme. I'd like to see just how extreme they are." "Also," Thunderbird continued before Wicked Bird could respond, "find a way to recruit some people from there. It doesn't matter what their background is, as long as they can contribute." "Yes, teacher," Wicked Bird replied, noticing that Thunderbird was ready to get serious. "In Northern Europe, I know some Death Eaters who are in exile from England, and some werewolves who used to work with us." "Death Eaters and werewolves?" Anduin sneered inwardly. It seemed like fate had brought his enemies to him without him even having to search for them. Thunderbird nodded in agreement. "Okay, it's just a temporary transportation channel, not a long-term cooperation. Handle it as you see fit and negotiate with them as needed." "The conditions are flexible?" Wicked Bird frowned. "The club has suffered such a significant loss. We can't afford high rewards." "Humph," Thunderbird sneered, mocking her. "Have you frozen up in a place like Northern Europe? I said it's temporary cooperation. After using them, just clean them up." End of this chapter. Chapter 534, Adding Another Fire. Hearing such cold-blooded and heartless words from Thunderbird, Wicked Bird was shocked. These people have quite a background. Won't playing black and white with them cause trouble for the club? And is it really appropriate to go head-to-head with Pure Land? They are not a pure criminal organization. While she had no qualms about setting fires, she was worried about the subsequent impact. Wicked Bird's concerns were not unfounded. Whether it was a werewolf or a Death Eater, they had corresponding populations or families behind them as support. Conflicts with them would definitely lead to backlash. The Pure Land Society was essentially the Nordic equivalent of the Death Eaters. These people were purely racist wizards, extremely hostile to Muggle-born wizards. However, they were not complete terrorists and even had a certain influence on Nordic officials. Silver Spear faced difficulties in Northern Europe, mainly because the club accommodated many half-blood and Muggle-born wizards, leading to rejection by the Pure Land Society and ongoing conflicts. For an organization like Pure Land, long-term entanglement would only harm Silver Spear. The club had always pursued a low-profile approach due to its limited membership. Now that Yaosheng had a head-on conflict with them, Silver Spear would struggle to operate in Northern Europe in the future. "I'm not afraid, so why should you be?" Thunderbird snorted coldly. "Germany will be our territory in the future. Do they dare to come to us for revenge? And I know how to measure things. I won't easily do something as reckless as burning bridges." Okay. Considering the current difficulties faced by the club and her teacher's personality, Wicked Bird found it easier to make such a decision. "Then I will return to Northern Europe. You know my true identity, so you can contact me directly with an owl." Understood. Anduin knew she was referring to her job at Durmstrang. Before taking the elixir, her real identity was not particularly critical, and the threat to the rest of the spears was minimal, making it relatively safe. One more thing. Anduin stopped her before she left. "How is the condition of the unicorn sister? I plan to transfer her back to the headquarters soon." "Don't worry, her sister is still under my control and in very good condition. I have no problem dealing with this kind of child," Thunderbird said confidently. "That's good. Unicorns will be useful in the future, so you have to take care of her sister." After confirming that Azalea's sister was fine, Anduin was relieved. "Okay, you can go now. Remember what I told you." "Yes," Wicked Bird responded, took out a portkey, and teleported away. Unlike the other spears, she didn't need to go back to the headquarters to exchange for the elixir. Once all the silver spears had left, Anduin turned his head to look at Park Number 1 not far away, a mocking sneer on his lips, and then disappeared. "My lord, what's the matter? Didn't they have wonderful expressions after finding the breeding park empty? We all saw it when the shape-shifting lizard reported to you. That golden snidget was so panicked he almost couldn't stand still." Shaltair was squatting in the monitoring room with Hog, gnawing on a large piece of pig's trotter, while looking hopefully at Anduin, who had just returned. "They all had masks on their faces. How could adults see their expressions, you idiot?" Hog retorted. Shaltair gave a blank look, then turned to Anduin. "The club's main magical beast reserves are depleted. They must be in chaos." "Exactly," Anduin replied, now dressed and sitting leisurely in a nearby chair. "The raid on the park was more effective than expected. The club is already showing signs of instability. Our next move is to fan the flames and push them into complete infighting. But these silver spears, especially the top ones, usually stay hidden. Even if we stir up internal strife, how can we ensure they fight each other?" Shaltair's concerns were valid. The silver spee, ours only appeared a few days each month, making them hard to catch. "It doesn't matter," Anduin reassured. "As long as the club can't replenish its resources, panic will spread, and their flaws will become more apparent. They'll worry about becoming prey and simultaneously hunt each other. Without the elixir, they're just terminally ill patients with 6 months to live. We can even wait for them to die off." "So, what's our next step? I saw from the surveillance that you accepted an errand in Northern Europe. Are you planning to start there?" Hog and Shaltair had been monitoring the situation closely. "Yes," Anduin nodded with a sneer. "In the short term, I'll travel frequently between Northern Europe and Germany. I'll find a way to stir up conflicts between the local wizards in Northern Europe and the club. This will disrupt their transportation and make it impossible for the club to establish a foothold there." "Are you planning another blockade like in Ireland? Won't that put you in direct danger? And as the person in charge, if you mess up this transportation, won't the club suspect you?" Hog asked, confused. Yes, my lord, Shaltair added. Don't you still want to meet the Rune Snake? If the club suffers a major loss, won't the Rune Snake lose trust in you? That's why we need a solid plan, Anduin said confidently. We need to make this transfer operation fail completely while keeping Thunderbird out of it. Hogg and Shaltair exchanged puzzled looks. They couldn't understand how to undermine the club's plan while keeping Thunderbird uninvolved. Anduin didn't elaborate, but went to his study, took out parchment, and wrote several letters. One letter was addressed to Newt, asking him to bring back the Vanishing Cabinet, since Anduin would need it for his trip to Northern Europe. Another letter was to Azalea, asking her to return to the club as a Silver Spear to act as an internal informant. He provided a plausible reason, saying she was needed to help care for the magical animals in his possession. He also sent a letter to the Black Dragon in North America, using the method Thunderbird had told him, asking him to gather magical animals and prepare them for transportation. The last letter was to Karkaroff, a professor at Durmstrang. Anduin had maintained contact with him for years, and Karkaroff had been collecting materials for him. In return, Anduin had provided significant funding for Karkaroff's local development. With Anduin's support and Karkaroff's skills, Karkaroff's status at Durmstrang had risen, and he was now the school's vice principal. Karkaroff was competent in many areas, but his timidity was a significant flaw. Many British Death Eaters had fled to Northern Europe, and Karkaroff, fearing their vengeance, rarely ventured outside the school. Anduin had tasked him with training some subordinates in Northern Europe, and purchasing land in a wizarding area to prepare for opening a future branch. However, Karkaroff had yet to accomplish this, which frustrated Anduin greatly. After writing several letters, Anduin sent them out one by one. He then took out a specially processed map of Germany, which could identify the location of trackers. At a previous gathering, Anduin had managed to get close to Jin Snidget and secretly placed a soft needle tracker on his clothes. Now, he intended to monitor this individual to uncover his true intentions. Upon confirming the tracker's location, Anduin frowned. What's going on? This guy is at the Ministry of Magic, and it seems to be the same location as Pete's. So, Pete is indeed the Golden Snidget? But why wasn't Pete wearing the mask when the Golden Snidget appeared? And what about the two Silver Spear masks hidden on his body? Could he have another identity within the club? It still doesn't explain how the Golden Snidgets appear in different places simultaneously. The different masks they wear suggests this isn't the effect of a time turner. If the two Golden Snidgets were the same person, the mask I tracked should have appeared on him in the future. But the current situation is that when the Golden Snidget appeared, he didn't have the mask I tracked on him. That mask was still on Pete. This means he has another Silver Spear costume. When one of the Golden Snidgets shows up, he must be wearing that costume and acting as the Golden Snidget. Golden Snidget, you are becoming more mysterious, but I will find your weakness. Anduin stared at the map in front of him, his resolve growing stronger. End of this chapter. Chapter 535, Norway. Another week had passed since the Changfeng meeting. During this time, the warehouse prison continued to operate stably. Although tensions between the civilian wizards, muggles, and patrols were still simmering, Moody's iron-fisted management ensured that no incidents occurred. Nathan and Bob discussed their escape plan daily, but they had yet to make a firm decision and were merely making preparations. According to Moody, their wandless spellcasting abilities had improved significantly, perhaps spurred by their desperate situation. However, they remained cautious about officially starting the jailbreak operation, hesitating to the point of frustration. Moody often berated them, calling them cowards for not seizing the opportunity to escape, despite the door being metaphorically wide open. Anduin and his team understood that such matters couldn't be rushed. For Nathan and Bob, this was a life-threatening endeavor, and their caution was only natural. While the prison situation showed little progress, Andre had made significant headway elsewhere. Through Andre's public relations efforts, the Schmidt family had reached a consensus with him. For these wizard families, honor and dignity were paramount, and being deceived was more hateful than being killed. The patriarch of the Schmidt family agreed to cooperate with Andre on the condition that Phoenix, the culprit who had entrapped their family, be completely eliminated or captured. Only then would they trust Andre without reservation. Anduin instructed Andre to comply with their request, but now was not the time. Phoenix had not been in Germany recently, and it would be unwise to attack her in France. Instead, Anduin took advantage of Phoenix's absence to infiltrate her stronghold in Germany and install a large number of monitoring devices. He planned to ambush her as soon as she reappeared. Regarding the Silver Spear, thanks to a tracker secretly placed by Anduin and the monitoring equipment deployed at their headquarters, along with Azalea's internal assistance, he had a good grasp of the club's recent activities. It was now certain that the Golden Snidget and Pete were the same person. Whenever the Golden Snidget acted, he would don a Silver Spear costume and leave the Ministry of Magic, while Pete remained there, as if they were two separate individuals. During this period, the Snidget organized several short spear missions and, under the leadership of the deformed lizard, launched a secret investigation in Germany. They checked all official magical zoo areas, wizard gathering spots, and black markets, but the stolen magical animals and people seemed to have vanished into thin air. No one had purchased large quantities of food, nor had anyone seen or heard of large shipments of magical animals. The investigation into the families of the staff led to the discovery of an evacuated basement at Claremont's residence. This clue was a lifeline for the Golden Snidget, who immediately followed Claremont's trail. Soon, they found a fireplace that had been disconnected from the Flu network in a secret darkroom of the Claremont black market. All evidence pointed to Claremont as the traitor, a revelation that shattered the Golden Snidget's heart. Claremont had known him since childhood and had followed him for many years, making his betrayal incomprehensible. As for whether Claremont's details would be exposed, the investigation continued. Claremont's rebellion did not particularly worry Golden Snidget. Claremont's mind had long been sealed with the strongest contract and secret-keeping magic. As long as Claremont realized that the person he was facing was not the one with the Silver Spear, he would be unable to reveal the secrets of the club and Golden Snidget, even subconsciously. During numerous conversations between Golden Snidget and Fire Ash Snake, Anduin learned that an investigation had been launched into Andre and others. It was discovered that Andre had disappeared with more than a dozen aurors for a few days, shortly before Jin Facia and others found the park emptied. This did arouse the suspicion of Golden Snidget and Ash Snake, but Andre had a legitimate reason for being with these aurors, and they were only gone for 3 days. Could they have evacuated the 3 breeding parks in just 3 days with such a small number of people? No one, not even Jin Facia, would believe it. Andre's movements only raised suspicion, but Golden Snidget did not consider him the primary suspect. For the sake of the investigation, the Silver Spears, who had always been low-key, began appearing frequently in various wizard gathering places, attracting much attention and even making the newspapers. Andre proposed launching an investigation and making arrests, but Pete rejected these suggestions for various reasons. Although Golden Snidget appeared calm every time he showed up at the headquarters, Anduin could sense his growing irritability. The missing magical animals had no leads, affecting the Ministry of Magic's division process. The most frightening aspect was the uncertainty of when the enemies lurking in the dark would strike again. Coupled with the different agendas of the club members, it was remarkable that Golden Snidget could maintain any semblance of composure. In Norway, Finnmark County, the northernmost tip of the European continent, lies the Durmstrang School of Magic. Durmstrang has existed since at least 1294 and is considered a magic school with a long history, one of the 3 largest in Europe, alongside Hogwarts and Beauxbatons. However, due to widespread discrimination against Muggle-born wizards in the Nordic wizarding community, Durmstrang does not admit Muggle-born students and is notorious for emphasizing the dark arts in its curriculum. Near Durmstrang, there is a wizarding gathering place similar to Hogsmeade. That night, in a corner of the Schwerong bar where wizards gathered, a wizard in black robes sat waiting for someone. The other wizards around him did not find this unusual. Such sneaky individuals were either black market dealers or had their faces ruined by potions they had concocted. They were not surprised by his presence. Before long, another person in black robes sat down opposite the mysterious wizard. After sitting down, he said in a low voice, "Sorry, my lord, for keeping you waiting." End of this chapter. Chapter 536, The Pure Land Association. "It doesn't matter, I just arrived anyway," the wizard said, slightly raising his head to reveal Anduin's young face under the cloak. "But I dressed like this to hide my identity. You are the vice principal of Durmstrang. Is it necessary to be so mysterious?" "My lord, you don't understand," the wizard sitting opposite Anduin replied, lifting his head to reveal Karkaroff. Despite sitting down, he still kept his hood over his head. "The Death Eaters have recently become active in Northern Europe again. If they find out I'm at Durmstrang, it will be troublesome. Those guys want to tear me apart, and I have no choice but to stay hidden." Karkaroff's face was still covered in a thick beard, but his courage seemed inversely proportional to his rugged appearance. Anduin pursed his lips in exasperation. After all these years, Karkaroff hadn't changed a bit. However, Anduin was aware of the Death Eaters Karkaroff mentioned. It was the wicked bird who was summoning them, likely gathering everyone for the Nordic transfer mission. "Have you gathered all the information I asked you to check?" Anduin asked, cutting straight to the main issue. "Don't worry, I've checked everything out," Karkaroff replied, swallowing nervously as he looked at Anduin. Although he hadn't seen Anduin in years, the young man still terrified him. He remembered how Anduin had tortured Yaxley into madness, executed Torquil without anyone noticing, and forced the Travers family to flee. This devilish figure, who had committed countless atrocities in Karkaroff's eyes, had not only escaped punishment, but had been awarded the title of Battle Hero by the British Ministry of Magic and publicly commended. Now an adult, Anduin's Silver Flash Alchemy Development Company had gained fame even in Northern Europe, with its products considered luxury items. "Let's talk. It shouldn't be difficult for you to collect information about the Nordic officials and the Pure Land Society," Anduin said, noticing Karkaroff's discomfort and deciding to get straight to the point. "Yes, my lord," Karkaroff replied, organizing his thoughts before speaking in a low voice. "In Northern Europe, although there are 4 countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland, the wizard population is small, and the culture is relatively unified. So, although there are 4 ministries of magic in name, they essentially share one organization. Even the headquarters of the Ministry of Magic has the same address. While some departments have separate offices in various countries, most are managed in a unified manner. The Minister of Magic here is elected as the Minister of Magic of the Nordic Union, not of any specific country. As for the Pure Land Society, it's more complicated. Their nature is similar to that of the British Death Eaters. The main difference is that there is no Dark Lord to unify all voices within the Pure Land Society. Most wizards in the region hold pure-blood supremacist views, so they have significant support here." Karkaroff paused, the mention of the Dark Lord still sending shivers down his spine despite the passage of time. The Pure Land Society is an organization in name, but it's more like a family union. All members are part of this union, and each pureblood family has its own sphere of influence. They usually don't interfere with each other, only coming together when facing common foreign enemies, or when there are shared interests. Anduin listened intently, absorbing the information. The Pure Land Society's structure and influence were crucial details for his plans. He needed to understand the dynamics at play to navigate the complex political landscape of Northern Europe effectively. The Pure Land Society. So when it comes to the Pure Land Society, the local shamans don't really recognize it. Although some families have their own place in the Pure Land Society, the areas they control are so far away that they can't meet them at all. Generally speaking, when we advance to the Pure Land Association, we directly mention specific families. For example, in Norway, where we are now, the largest pure-blood family is the Jacobson family. Many of these families have a seat in the Wizengamot Council of the Nordic Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic is not only well aware of the existence of the Pure Land Society, but it can also be said to be mutual. They are simply wearing the same pair of pants. At the same time, because of this reason, the Pure Land Society will not be as extreme as the British Death Eaters. Karkaroff paused, feeling that his explanation wasn't accurate enough, and added, "At least for the local people, that's the case. They are still quite disciplined when dealing with local wizards, and will even assist the Ministry of Magic in various aspects. The number of Muggles in Northern Europe is very small, and as long as they don't run into the Pure Land Society, they will not take the initiative to embarrass these Muggles. But when it comes to outsiders and non-pure blood wizards, the image of the Pure Land Society is not so kind. People in this organization are extremely xenophobic. They hate and despise Muggle-born wizards and will attack them if they find out. Muggle-born wizards who come to Northern Europe will be beaten and expelled from the country, or even tortured to death. They regard blood purity as the highest honor, and the local Ministry of Magic turns a blind eye to this situation. After all, in the Ministry of Magic, the idea of pure blood supremacy also accounts for the majority, let alone people like the Pure Land Society. In addition to Muggle-born wizards, mixed-race wizards with a high proportion of Muggle blood, as well as wizards and entities that are friendly to Muggles, will also be suppressed by the Pure Land Society. The Silver Spears you asked me about belong to this category. When the Silver Spears first entered, there were many Muggle-born wizards among their ranks and their partners. Additionally, they came to poach and smuggle native magical animals, which angered the Pure Land Society. That's why the Pure Land Society once launched a targeted confiscation of the Silver Spears. It is said that several Silver Spears were killed. Now the Silver Spears Club is not only struggling locally, but it can also be said to be nearly extinct. Karkaroff briefly introduced to Anduin the structure of wizards in Northern Europe and the style of the Pure Land Society. Anduin nodded knowingly after listening to Karkaroff's narration. If the situation of the German Ministry of Magic is gradually splitting, then the Ministry of Magic of the Nordic countries is tending to unite, which can be said to be very different. There is also a certain gap between the Pure Land Society in Northern Europe and the Death Eaters. If the Death Eaters in Britain are a group of out-and-out terrorists, the Pure Land Society is somewhat similar to a family-based underworld organization. They will use extreme means to attack their enemies, but they will also maintain local order to some extent. The Ministry of Magic in Northern Europe is just like an official organization controlled by the underworld. It's no wonder that the Wicked Bird is so repulsive after learning about her previous appointment. In Northern Europe, she can't even use the power of the Ministry of Magic. It's like being beaten on the ground and unable to call the police. Copy the guys together. Then what about the professor and student I brought to your attention? What about their situation? Anduin asked, not forgetting the little sister of the professor. Wicked Bird and Azalea. You're talking about Asia Donnelly and Anais Roll, who teach potions at Durmstrang, right? Karkaroff asked, puzzled by Anduin's specific request for information about these two individuals. Despite his confusion, he had diligently completed the task. Asia Donnelly joined Durmstrang a few years ago, 2 years after I did. Her potion-making skills are indeed impressive, but she tends to keep a low profile and has few friends. I sense she might be high, ding something, but since we rarely interact, I haven't delved deeper, Karkaroff explained. And Anais Roll is a third-year student at Durmstrang and one of my pupils. However, she often appears unwell and sickly. She and Asia seem to share a close bond, as if they knew each other before Anais enrolled. Asia takes good care of her, he continued. Has there been any recent change in Asia's behavior? Anduin inquired softly, taking a sip of the cold butterbeer on the table. Recently, she has been frequently leaving the school under the pretext of purchasing potion ingredients, but she has stayed on campus for the past couple of days, Karkaroff recalled. Anduin nodded thoughtfully. It seemed the Wicked Bird was nearly ready. He had contacted her 2 days ago, and she mentioned that the first transportation mission would commence in 2 or 3 days. You did a good job, Anduin said, nodding in satisfaction. He then took out a bulging leather bag and pushed it across the table to Karkaroff. The muffled thud of the bag hitting the wooden table and the clinking of metal inside suggested a substantial amount of money. My lord, the funds you provided earlier have not yet been exhausted. Thanks to your support, my cousin secured his position as the school manager and I proudly hold the vice principal position. Now, what is this for? Karkaroff asked respectfully, eyeing the leather bag with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. There are 3,000 galleons inside. Take it, Anduin instructed firmly. This money is not for bribing the school director or principal. It's for you to assist me with my affairs. Use it to find and purchase a suitable piece of land in a large wizarding community in Northern Europe. I plan to open a branch there, and you will act as my agent. Rest assured you will be well compensated. My lord. Karkaroff's expression turned sour at the mention of this task again. Anduin had previously urged him to handle this matter, but he had delayed it. Now, with the money literally thrown in his face, he had no choice but to comply. End of this chapter. Chapter 5 and 37, The Root, My Lord. Karkaroff's face turned bitter as Anduin brought up the matter again. Anduin had urged him to address this issue before, but Karkaroff had managed to avoid it. He never expected Anduin to confront him so directly today. I know what you're worried about. You're afraid those Death Eaters will come after you, right? Anduin gave Karkaroff a disapproving look. They're just a bunch of lost dogs. Do you really need to be so afraid? Lost dogs? As if I'm not one myself, Karkaroff thought silently. Master Wilson, you know my situation. I may look like I'm doing well now, being the vice principal of Durmstrang, but with my strength, if I encounter those Death Eaters, I'm as good as dead, Karkaroff said with a wry smile. Who are the main Death Eaters active in Northern Europe now? Is it Yaxley? Anduin asked, recalling that his former classmate Rory Yaxley had a brother who was a Death Eater in exile in Europe. Yes, besides him, there are the Caro siblings and about 7 or 8 other Death Eaters who hang out together. These guys come from pure blood families, so they aren't harassed by the Pure Land Society in Northern Europe. They usually roam the gray areas of the Nordic wizarding world. While they won't become a major threat, they've managed to establish a foothold. Karkaroff explained, sighing as he mentioned these familiar names. He had been keeping tabs on them out of fear of retaliation. You don't have to worry about these people, Anduin said, a sneer forming on his face. This time, I'm in Northern Europe to deal with them. All you need to do is handle this matter for me. Deal with them? Karkaroff was terrified. Could it be? If you shouldn't ask, don't ask. Just remember that many things may happen in Northern Europe soon, but they won't concern you. Ignore them, Anduin said, recalling something. By the way, you mentioned before that the Pure Land Society in Norway is controlled by the Jacobson family. Do you know anything about this family? Do you know anyone from this family? Yes, Karkaroff nodded, still puzzled by Anduin's cryptic statements. The Jacobson family has significant local influence, almost all over Norway. The current headmaster of Durmstrang Magic School is a member of the Jacobson family, named Seth Jacobson. My relationship with him is quite good. I became the vice principal through his connections. Oh? Your headmaster is from the Jacobson family? That's interesting, Anduin said, a playful expression crossing his face. Karkaroff, do you want to be the headmaster of Durmstrang? What? Headmaster? Karkaroff was taken aback. He quickly looked around to ensure no one was eavesdropping. My lord, stop joking. Seth Jacobson is firmly in his position and far from retirement. I became the vice principal because of his promotion. He has significant influence in the school. Opposing him would be disastrous. Don't worry, Karkaroff. I cast a shielding spell around us after you sat down. No one will hear our conversation, Anduin chuckled at Karkaroff's nervousness. And I'm not asking you to publicly oppose Seth or usurp his position. I know you can't do that. Instead of feeling annoyed by Anduin's slightly sarcastic words, Karkaroff nodded repeatedly. Anduin had a good life at Durmstrang and saw no need to create unnecessary trouble. He asked Karkaroff in a different tone, "Let me ask you something. If something were to happen to Principal Jacobson, do you think you have a chance of being promoted to principal?" Karkaroff was taken aback by Anduin's question. Why was this young man asking such a thing? Was he planning something drastic again? Karkaroff felt a sense of dread, but seeing Anduin's sharp gaze, he quickly replied, If Principal Jacobson were to have an accident, as the vice principal, with the support of the school board and some financial backing, it wouldn't be impossible for me to be promoted, but nothing. Anduin interrupted with a sly smile. Karkaroff, you might get that opportunity sooner than you think. You seem to be quite fortunate. What opportunity? My lord, please don't frighten me, Karkaroff said, his voice trembling with fear. Don't ask unnecessary questions, Anduin replied curtly. He rummaged through his belongings and pulled out a large leather bag, similar to the one he had given Karkaroff before. Here are another 2,000 galleons. Keep them for emergencies. Are you serious? Karkaroff asked, realizing that Anduin was implying the money was for securing his promotion after an accident befalls the current principal. I've already said, you don't need to know too much, Anduin said, growing impatient. Stay at Durmstrang and wait for my summons. I need you to pass some information to Principal Jacobson. What kind of information? Karkaroff asked, still confused. It's about the Silver Spear. If there are large-scale activities of the Silver Spear in Norway during this period, your principal, being a member of the Jacobson family, should be interested, Anduin explained. The Silver Spear? The Jacobson family is indeed interested in their movements, but what does this have to do with Principal Jacobson stepping down? Karkaroff asked, bewildered. You really are an idiot, Anduin said, exasperated. Just do as I say and wait for my news. Without further explanation, Anduin pulled his cloak tighter around him and disappeared, using an illusion spell to hide his figure. Karkaroff, left with a mix of fear and confusion, quickly pocketed the leather bags and left the scene. After leaving the bar, Anduin changed into a Silver Spear costume and apparated to a remote stone house nearby. Besides meeting Karkaroff, he had also arranged to meet the Wicked Bird, which was his main purpose. The stone house served as a temporary safe house in northern Europe, found by the Wicked Bird. Other helpers were also set to gather there. Upon arriving at the hut, Anduin, disguised as the Thunderbird, did not enter immediately. He drew his wand and pointed it at the air. The air around him rippled, and a gap slowly opened, as if a transparent curtain had been lifted. Anduin nodded in approval. Although the enchantment magic used by the Wicked Bird wasn't particularly strong, its concealment and protection were impressive. After a moment of contemplation, he lowered his head and stepped forward. Passing through the transparent door curtain, he found himself inside the true safe house of the Wicked Bird. The house appeared more lively than before. The windows on each floor of the 3-story hut were illuminated, and shadows of people could be seen moving behind the glass. As Thunderbird entered the barrier, the Wicked Bird, who had been waiting inside, sensed his arrival. She quickly opened the door and greeted him. My lord, I have already gathered everyone as per your instructions, she said. The Wicked Bird seemed to have been waiting for some time, her body warm from the house's heat. As she stepped into the cold open space outside, her clothes emitted wisps of green smoke. Very good. Have you chosen the time, place, and route for the landing? Anduin asked, not rushing into the hut, but instead staying outside to converse with the Wicked Bird. Yes, it has been confirmed. The landing will take place late at night, the day after tomorrow. The location is marked on the map. We will land in the sea near Trondheim, where the water is not frozen yet. From there, we will travel north along the Norwegian coastline, entering Russia from northern Norway, and then detour back to Germany from the east, she explained, handing him a rolled-up map. Anduin spread out the map and examined it briefly. Wouldn't it be easier to go directly east across Sweden and Finland? If you go too far north, the weather will be extremely cold. Moreover, your route seems to pass through Finland's Mark County, where the Durmstrang School of Witchcraft and Magic is located. There are also wizarding areas around there. Are you sure this arrangement won't arouse suspicion? He questioned. End of this chapter. Chapter 5 and 38. I called you a bastard, didn't you hear? My lord, you might not be aware, the Wicked Bird replied with a chuckle. In Northern Europe, it's best not to cross borders at will. Although the Ministry of Magic here is mostly unified, there are still auror patrols and monitoring spells at the borders. So, if you frequently cross the border, it's easy to attract the attention of the local Ministry of Magic. Once they discover you, the Pure Land Society will also be alerted. The club has had several smuggling activities in Northern Europe, and each time something happened at the border. As for passing through Finnmark County, where Durmstrang is located, You don't need to worry too much. Although there is a large gathering of wizards here, the Pure Land Society's control is relatively loose because of this. The harsh natural environment in the north means they seldom patrol outside. While the chance of running into them isn't zero, it's lower compared to other routes. Besides, you know the saying, it's darkest under the lamp. As long as our transfer speed is fast enough, we can pass through this dangerous area without alarming them. With the guards we've prepared, the safety factor is much higher than a horizontal transfer. The only troublesome thing is the weather. You've seen the situation in the extreme north. Although it's not winter yet, the temperature is already below zero. We might encounter extreme conditions like blizzards, so our main concern should be how to protect the magical animals from the cold. The Wicked Bird's extensive experience in Northern Europe was evident. Their preparation in terms of intelligence, routes, and environment was thorough. Even Anduin couldn't help but nod in satisfaction after hearing the complete plan. Northern Europe is a dangerous area, and it's impossible to avoid all risks. Although the transfer route she chose is more convoluted, it is indeed much safer. The most dangerous part is Finnmark County, but the probability of accidents is relatively low. All right, we'll follow your plan, Thunderbird nodded, rolling up the map and putting it away. I'll contact the Black Dragon. They have the goods ready and can go into the water at any time. They will show up on time at the scheduled location the day after tomorrow. In addition, Thunderbird's tone suddenly became solemn. This cargo volume is the largest in history. We need to release all the raw materials that have accumulated in the Americas for a long time. This operation is critical and must succeed. Seeing Thunderbird's seriousness, Wicked Bird responded with equal gravity. Don't worry, for this operation, I've used all my contacts and gathered a lot of helpers, but the transportation is long, and we have to pass through some wizarding areas. Don't worry, Thunderbird interrupted. I will escort you all the way during your transshipment in Northern Europe. I won't let Britain's defeat happen again. His voice was full of determination. Hearing this, Wicked Bird breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, the transportation route she arranged was relatively safe. But in Northern Europe, where silver spears are extremely repelled, anything could happen. After finishing the conversation with Wicked Bird, Thunderbird raised his chin and pointed toward the house. Have all the people you summoned arrived? Yes, Wicked Bird nodded, looking at the stone house. This time, I've invited 10 Death Eater wizards and 6 werewolves. They are quite capable and can share a lot of the pressure. To address the other werewolves who were charging at him. With a swift motion, he flicked his wrist, and a burst of magical energy erupted from his hand, creating a shockwave that sent the remaining werewolves sprawling to the ground. The room fell silent, the only sound being the crackling of the fireplace. Thunderbird stood tall, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the stone house. He looked around, his eyes cold and unyielding, before finally speaking. Let this be a lesson to all of you, Thunderbird said, his voice echoing through the room. I am not someone to be trifled with. If you wish to conduct business with me, you will do so with respect. The wizard who had accompanied Fenrir stepped forward cautiously, his demeanor much more subdued than before. I apologize for Fenrir's behavior, he said, bowing slightly. We did not mean to offend you. My name is Yaxley, and I am here to ensure that our transaction goes smoothly. Thunderbird nodded, his expression softening slightly. Very well, Yaxley. Let us proceed with the business at hand. But remember, any further disrespect will not be tolerated. Yaxley nodded in agreement, and the tension in the room began to dissipate. The other occupants of the stone house, who had been watching the confrontation with bated breath, slowly returned to their previous activities, though they kept a wary eye on Thunderbird. As the two wizards moved to a quieter corner to discuss their dealings, Fenrir slowly picked himself up from the ground, his face contorted with rage and humiliation. He glared at Thunderbird, but the look in his eyes was one of grudging respect. He knew better than to challenge someone who had so effortlessly bested him. Thunderbird and Yaxley spoke in hushed tones, their conversation punctuated by occasional glances at the rest of the room. Despite the earlier altercation, it was clear that both parties were determined to see their business through. After a while, Thunderbird stood up, signaling the end of their discussion. "It seems we have reached an agreement," he announced to the room. "I trust that there will be no further issues." Yaxley nodded in affirmation. "Indeed, we will ensure that everything proceeds as planned." With that, Thunderbird turned and strode out of the stone house, his presence leaving a lasting impression on everyone inside. The door closed behind him, and the room slowly returned to its previous state of activity, though the memory of the confrontation lingered in the minds of all who had witnessed it. As Thunderbird walked away, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. He had made his point clear, and he knew that his reputation would only grow stronger as a result. In the world of dark wizards and werewolves, respect was earned through strength, and Thunderbird had just proven that he was a force to be reckoned with. Thunderbird pointed his hand at Fenrir, and from the stone wall that had borne the brunt of Fenrir's impact, large hands made of rock emerged, grabbing Fenrir and pinning him tightly to the wall. Without pausing, Thunderbird turned his attention to the other werewolves charging towards him. He raised his hand and slapped his chin, sending a powerful force towards the werewolf at the front. The werewolf was flung backward, crashing through several pieces of wooden furniture before slamming into the wall with a loud thud. Thunderbird continued his assault, slapping his hands 4 more times and sending the remaining werewolves flying. For a moment, the room was filled with the sight of werewolves soaring through the air. Some unfortunate bystanders were hit by the airborne werewolves, knocked out before they could react. The force of Thunderbird's obstacles spell was immense, and every werewolf that touched it felt pain coursing through their bodies, unable to rise again after landing. The room quickly descended into chaos, filled with the sounds of painful wails from the werewolves sprawled on the ground and against the walls. In front of Thunderbird, no one remained standing. Witnessing this astonishing scene, the wizard who had hidden at the beginning felt his scalp tingle with fear. What is with this silver spear gun? What a lunatic. No one would attack an employee as soon as they met their employer, and this guy's strength is too exaggerated. Do ordinary impediment spells have this kind of power? Also, this person is too reckless. He doesn't even consider that there are other people watching. If I hadn't hidden quickly, I might have been seriously injured. The wizard, though, to himself. Thunderbird sneered at the werewolves in front of him with contempt. Beasts are beasts, unable to distinguish even the most basic situations. Didn't anyone teach you? A waste should have the self-awareness of a waste. Recklessly attacking the strong only makes you look even more foolish. You really don't know the heights of the sky and the depths of the earth. He then turned his gaze to the wizard who had been watching. "Your name?" he demanded. "Me?" The wizard was stunned for a moment before he realized Thunderbird was addressing him. He quickly stepped forward, speaking cautiously. "Hi, I'm Otis Yaxley, the leader of these wizards. We are not in the same group as those werewolves." End of this chapter. Chapter 539, Cynicism. Me? The wizard was momentarily stunned before he realized he was being addressed. He hurriedly took a step forward and cautiously introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Otis Yaxley, the leader of these wizards. We are not in the same group as those werewolves." Upon noticing the domineering demeanor of the new silver spear in front of him, Otis immediately distanced himself from the werewolves. He didn't want to end up like Fenrir. At this moment, the wicked bird, who had been standing behind the Thunderbird, stepped forward. "This is Otis, a member of the 2028 Pureblood Yaxley family from the UK. For some reason, he has been active in Northern Europe in recent years. He and the wizards under him have a good reputation," Wicked Bird explained. She had been observing from the sidelines, knowing that trying to persuade Thunderbird when he was angry would be futile. She waited until Thunderbird had dealt with the werewolves before stepping in to clean up the mess. This was a task she had handled before. As for the werewolves, Wicked Bird wasn't too concerned. Their status in the wizarding world was already precarious, and they were difficult to control. Thunderbird's actions might actually serve as a necessary blow to them. "Oh, I know. The British Death Eaters were expelled by the Ministry of Magic after their failed rebellion," Thunderbird said, glancing at Otis with a playful smirk. I also heard that your boss was killed by a child? That's really embarrassing. Otis's cheeks twitched as he stared at the silver spear in front of him, feeling an inexplicable anger. Did this guy even know how to speak like a human? If he didn't think he couldn't beat Thunderbird, he might have fought him on the spot. He couldn't understand why the guy in front of him was so disrespectful and had such a foul mouth. But Otis finally suppressed his anger and said with a stiff expression, I won't bother you about our Death Eaters, but we have to work together in the future. Is it really appropriate to mess up the situation as soon as you arrive? Oh, it's just a bunch of rubbish, Thunderbird replied indifferently, raising his chin. With the conditions we proposed, are you afraid we won't be able to recruit people? The reason we sought you out was on the advice of the wicked bird. If you don't want to do it, get out as soon as possible. Otis lost his temper immediately after being hit by Thunderbird's words. He knew that what the other party said was true. When the wicked bird found them, the reward offered was very attractive. It was equivalent to half a year's work. Before they came here, they had also heard about the work content of the silver spear, which was mostly related to the smuggling of magical animals. Smuggling in Northern Europe, especially with the silver spear, was indeed risky, but the benefits were substantial. Silver Spear's main concern was the Ministry of Magic and the Pure Land Society in Northern Europe, so it was impossible to find locals. However, even wizards from other places were willing to accept their conditions, though the recruits were relatively scattered and not as organized as Death Eaters and werewolves. My lord! After Thunderbird finished berating Otis, Wicked Bird interjected. What should we do with these werewolves? Should we continue to hire them, or just drive them away? The werewolf leader should have come to his senses by now. Go and put him down. Ask them what they think. If they don't want to do it, let them go. It's not a big deal to lose a few people, Thunderbird said indifferently, twitching his chin towards the opposite wall. Then he leisurely paced to the restaurant next door. Thunderbird turned his back to Wicked Meow and the others, adding coldly, When they've made up their minds, bring them to see me. Don't fabricate anything for me later. You pests. Yes, my lord, Wicked Bird replied respectfully. In the club, she was the only one who could maintain such an attitude towards Thunderbird, and she was one of the few silver spears in Thunderbird who didn't speak with sarcasm. After Thunderbird left the inner hall, Otis couldn't help but frown. He approached Wicked Bird and whispered, What's the matter with your superior? Why is his temper so bad? It's like everyone owes him money. I'm sorry, Mr. Yaxley, Wicked Bird replied apologetically. Lord Thunderbird has always been straightforward. You'll get used to it. Haven't you seen his strength? With him here, this operation isn't as dangerous as you might think. Get used to it? Otis pursed his lips in silence. Maybe the job wasn't that dangerous, but the process might not be so worry-free. After comforting Otis for a while, Wicked Bird turned to Fenrir, who was still trapped against the wall by Thunderbird's transfiguration. Fenrir, still trapped, couldn't bear the humiliation. Put me down. I want that bastard to see the wrath of a werewolf. Your Excellency Greyback, I think it's better for you to calm down. Wicked Bird sighed helplessly at the out-of-control werewolf. No matter how many times you try, you can't be a match for Lord Thunderbird. Then, I can't let him humiliate us like this. I must make him pay the price, Fenrir growled, baring his sharp fangs. It seems that at least Lord Thunderbird said something right. You still haven't recognized the current situation. Wicked Bird snapped coldly. Fenrir, we found you because we believed in a good foundation of cooperation. Don't force me to change my mind. If you can't get your head straight, I'll have to ask you to leave. Otis also approached. Although he didn't have a good relationship with the werewolves, he had some friendship with them. He advised, Yes, Fenrir, now is not the time to lose your temper. He deliberately lowered his voice and moved closer to Fenrir's ear. You've seen the strength of that silver spear. He didn't even draw his wand, and you had no power to parry. Clashing with him rashly will only bring you suffering. And I think that person's arrogance is natural. I just watched from the sidelines and didn't say anything, yet I was still scolded by him. I think his spirit isn't normal. You really don't have to take him so seriously. Besides, The reward for this mission is substantial. Are you going to give up just like that? If not for yourself, think about the other werewolves too. When he was in England, Fenrir had contact with the Death Eaters and had cooperated with them, so Otis was familiar with him. Otis thought that since they were all hired to complete the tasks, it would be better to stay with Fenrir, an acquaintance. At least they knew each other better, so he was extra careful when advising. After hearing what Otis said, Fenrir's expression gradually became conflicted. Indeed, the situation for their werewolves was becoming increasingly difficult. They were deeply discriminated against by wizards, and some even fought them. In other places, werewolves had few ways to make a living, and even dark wizards didn't like dealing with them. Now it was just a continuation of the previous situation. The reason Fenrir was so angry this time wasn't just because Thunderbird humiliated them, but also because they lost so badly. When he was insulted before, Fenrir would launch bloody revenge, but this time they couldn't resist the opponent's strength at all. Fenrir's resentment was palpable. Fine, I can accept the previous conditions and continue to work for you, but don't expect me to give that bastard any favors. Although Fenrir agreed, the sternness in his eyes remained undiminished. He had not completely let go of his anger, he had merely buried it temporarily. That's right, let's take a long-term view. Master Thunderbird may have a bad temper, but as long as you don't provoke him, you'll be fine, Wicked Bird said, dismissing Fenrir's bitterness. She knew that the success of their mission was uncertain, and whether any of them would return alive was still in question. After casting a spell to release Fenrir from the wall, Wicked Bird took out a few bottles of potions and handed them out. These are tonics. Give them to the injured. Once everyone has recovered, we'll go see Lord Thunderbird. Fenrir and Otis quickly administered the potions to the injured wizards. They were dismayed to find that the injuries were severe. Both the werewolves and the wizards had suffered serious internal injuries. Fortunately, the potions provided by Wicked Bird, who was a professor of potions, were effective. While they didn't offer immediate recovery, they at least ensured that everyone could move without hindrance. After a while, Wicked Bird gathered all the employees and led them to Thunderbird. "My lord, everyone is here, and they have all expressed their willingness to continue working," she said softly. "Have you all accepted it?" "I thought some of you would have more backbone," Thunderbird sneered, glancing around contemptuously. "You." Fenrir knew the comment was directed at him, but he also understood that the werewolf group desperately needed the reward. Despite his fury, he held his tongue and turned his head away in frustration. "My lord, please stop provoking them. Let's get down to business, shall we?" Wicked Bird couldn't bear Thunderbird's sarcasm any longer, and couldn't help but persuade him. End of this chapter. Chapter 540, Phoenix. "Well, I don't want to waste time here either." Thunderbird nodded slightly to Wicked Bird, then turned to the other dozen or so wizards. "In this operation, the task you need to complete must have been explained to you by Wicked Bird. You must ensure the safety of our transported goods. During this period, you may encounter resistance from the Ministry of Magic and the Pure Land Society. Even if the enemy is them, do not hesitate. Can you do it?" At this moment, Thunderbird's voice was deep and magnetic, a stark contrast to his previous arrogance. If it weren't for the uniform tone, these wizards might not have believed that the person in front of them could exhibit such normal behavior. Wicked Bird has told us these words more than once. To put it bluntly, we used to do illegal work and dealt with those aurors a lot. You should know why we met this time? Otis knew that Fenrir was unwilling to talk to Thunderbird, so he took the initiative to speak. "Oh, it really is a bunch of guys who are open to money," Thunderbird sneered. "In that case, I won't bother you anymore. Everyone who participates in this operation can get 200 galleons, which is a good reward compared to what we did before." After finishing, Thunderbird took out 2 leather bags, one big and one small, and smashed them on the dining table. "We will pay half of it as a deposit before the mission starts. Of this, 1,600 galleons belong to the Death Eaters, and 600 galleons belong to the werewolves. You all should count it." Seeing that Thunderbird was so forthright and had prepared the deposit, Otis and Fenrir couldn't help but glance at each other, both of them seeing the joy in each other's eyes. After receiving the purse and confirming that the amount in it was correct, Otis nodded in satisfaction. Okay, it's a pleasure doing business with your silver spears. Don't worry, we will do our best in this operation. Since you have received the money, you must do things well. From now on, stay here honestly and don't go out to make trouble. The rest of the arrangements will be handled by Wicked Bird. Thunderbird's main purpose here was to deliver the money and hire these people, which was a significant investment. Since the money has been collected, we will naturally cooperate with all our strength, Otis said, now feeling that Thunderbird didn't seem so annoying. For the sake of these galleons, he would not say anything against it at this time. Fenrir, on the side, still had a gloomy face, but after receiving the galleons, his expression softened noticeably. Wicked Bird, I will leave the follow-up arrangements to you. You will be responsible for all actions. Although I will escort you, I will not follow you openly. If there is an emergency, contact me. After giving instructions to Wicked Bird, Thunderbird immediately apparated and disappeared. After hearing Thunderbird's words, Wicked Bird nodded in relief. She understood that Thunderbird was showing her trust. You must know that spears in the club rarely appear in a certain place for a long time to hide their molting period. And since Thunderbird told her that he would escort her for a period of time after transportation, it was equivalent to telling Wicked Bird that the next few days were not Thunderbird's molting period, which was a very trustworthy gesture. At the same time, Wicked Bird didn't expect Thunderbird to follow all the way from the beginning. This transportation distance was not short, and it consumed time along the way, which was extremely dangerous for the spear that continued to hide its molt. Therefore, very few spears chose to personally escort the smuggled goods. Only someone like Wicked Bird, who had time to use the elixir, could do this kind of thing. 2 days passed quickly. Anduin, who had transformed into Thunderbird again, quickly arrived at the location he had agreed upon with Wicked Bird. It was an uninhabited area. The coast outside Trondheim, Norway, was a desolate and frigid place. Although the northernmost point wasn't frozen, the temperature was still bone-chillingly low, and fine snowflakes were gently falling from the sky. More than a dozen people were already waiting quietly on the shore. Most of these wizards and werewolves were scattered around, keeping watch, while Wicked Bird, Otis, and Fenrir stood silently on the dark shore. The sudden appearance of Thunderbird through apparition drew everyone's attention. However, once they recognized him, they returned to their respective posts, maintaining a professional demeanor. But to Anduin, all of this was riddled with flaws. The vigilant wizards were standing guard in the open, without even the most basic concealment. At the very least, they should have found a bunker to hide behind. Anduin, with his obsessive-compulsive tendencies, grumbled inwardly but then dismissed it. The more lax these people were, the more advantageous it would be for his subsequent plans. My lord, it's almost time. Wicked Bird instinctively began to call him teacher, but quickly corrected himself, aware of the others around. I know. The Black Dragon has already written back to me, and they will arrive on time. But the environment here is harsh, so a little delay is normal, Thunderbird reassured, noticing Wicked Bird's nervousness. That's good. If there were a better option, we wouldn't need to receive the goods in this freezing place. Wicked Bird sighed helplessly. Suddenly, a splash of water surged in the distance, and 8 horse-shaped water monsters emerged, dragging 2 oddly shaped square boats behind them. It was similar to what Anduin had seen in Ireland before, but this time there were 2 ships. They're here, Wicked Bird shouted to Thunderbird, his voice filled with emotion. Let's send them a signal. There should be quite a few escorts, Thunderbird said, recalling that during the last transport in England, there was only 1 ship, and it had more than 20 wizards accompanying it. Wicked Bird nodded hurriedly, pulled out his wand, and cast a dark blue light that extended from the tip of his wand towards the distant horse-shaped water monsters. Immediately, the creatures followed the lead and swam straight to the shore, where Thunderbird and the others were waiting. As the 2 ships approached the shore, a large square opening was pushed open with a bang, and a wizard poked his head out. Goodness, the place you chose to pick up the goods is freezing. A masked man in a silver spear costume exclaimed as he jumped out of the cabin, rubbing his body as if he might freeze to death any second. "Sweet Soundbird, I didn't expect you to come here with the boat," Thunderbird said in surprise, casting a waterproof and moisture-proof spell on the Soundbird. "I haven't seen you in a long time, Thunderbird," Sweet Soundbird replied. Visibly more relaxed after being protected by the spell, he quickly walked over to Thunderbird's side. "I had no choice. This shipment is enormous, almost emptying the American branch's inventory from the past 2 years. I couldn't trust the partners alone for the escort, so the Black Dragon asked me to help ensure nothing went wrong," Sweet Soundbird explained. "But seriously, why did you choose such a desolate place for the transport? We almost hit underwater icebergs several times on the way here. The weather is terrible. Honestly, I'm worried the magical animals won't be able to withstand it," he continued, his voice filled with concern. The two of them had clearly endured a lot along the way. "Stop complaining and get the goods unloaded. I've prepared clothes and potions to keep you warm, as well as a lot of diluted potions for the magical animals," the wicked bird said, pulling out 2 large boxes. One was filled with potions, and the other with thick clothes. These were prepared to help the American wizards and magical animals resist the severe cold during the long journey, as it was impossible to use magic spells to keep warm all the time. As a direct subordinate of the Black Dragon, Yue Yin Bird was unaware of the recent events at the Silver Spear headquarters. He assumed that the only difference between this smuggling operation and previous ones was the larger cargo volume, so he was more relaxed than the wicked bird, though this also led to some resentment. "So many potions? Do we have to keep taking them all the way? You guys really don't know how to be considerate," Juyin Bird sighed helplessly. All right. I guess it's just my luck to always get stuck with these tedious tasks." Juyin Bird pulled out his wand, controlled the 2 large boxes, and gently lowered them onto the boat. He then patted his head, pulled out a piece of parchment, and handed it to Thunderbird. "Look at my brain. It's gone numb from the cold. Here's the delivery handover list. Check if everything is in order." After Thunderbird took the parchment, Juyin Bird turned around and began directing the rest of the crew to take their potions and start loading and unloading the goods. Anduin examined the parchment closely and found that the number of magical animals being transported this time was indeed substantial. There were 4 long-horned water snakes, 3 cat leopards, 1 manticore, 4 Peruvian vipertooths, 7 balloons, 2 horns, 1 ornith, 5 thestrals, 9 Tebow warthogs, 6 hippogriffs, 13 grindylows, 3 mutter rats, 6 billywigs, and 4 mooncrackers. When he reached the end of the list, Anduin raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You actually got a phoenix!" "Hey!" Wei Yin Bird, who was busy directing, turned around and laughed upon hearing Thunderbird's exclamation. "Yes, the Black Dragon himself acquired that phoenix. Don't underestimate it. This magical creature may not be large, but it has a unique teleportation magic that can't be contained by an ordinary cage with an anti-apparition spell. It's incredibly troublesome to handle." End of this chapter.